Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another pair of rounds in the UKSimRacing Porsche Cup Season 4, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today, our drivers make their way back to Italy for the Imola circuit in rounds 7 and 8 of the championship that continues to ask the question, who is the master of the Porsche 992 Cup car? Indeed, with our drivers being split over two classes, gold and silver, and also Teams Championship to play for as well, the stakes could not be higher as we make our way into the second half of the season and time trickles down on the racing. But indeed, the ferocity of it and the ferociousness of the battling only continues to intensify. And as we make our way into the second half, of course, what a venue to be racing at today. The legendary Imola circuit, also known in full as the Autodromo Internazionale Enzo e Dino Ferrari circuit, one that is a very emotionally charged circuit amongst racing drivers, whether in the real world or the sim world, for the simple reason there have been some absolute highs in motorsport in history, but there's also been quite a few dramatic lows, and none other than, of course, the infamous Formula 1 weekend where we saw the loss of life of both Roland Ratzenberger and also Ayrton Senna at this circuit. Indeed, times have moved on since then, but it remains in the hearts of our drivers. Indeed, any motorsport fan cannot go 5 seconds without thinking about Imola and what it also foretells with regards to the potential events of the past and what can lie ahead. But what we can promise you today is, as our drivers get set, practicing in the background at the moment, that you've got two cracking races underhand, and we're about to get underway very shortly. Now, we'll come into our schedule in due course, but just a little bit of housekeeping. This is a live broadcast which will become immediately available after the racing has concluded on the UKSimRacing YouTube channel, and therefore if you're not subscribed to the UKSimRacing YouTube channel when you do tune in, be sure to subscribe. Indeed, feel free to subscribe to all of our media, whether it be on YouTube, alternatively on Twitch. We'd really appreciate it, and it means that you can stay in touch with all the latest racing action and broadcasts that are brought to you via our media channels. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Who am I as your commentator and host? Well, my name is Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all of your racing action tonight, and indeed for the remainder of the season, and what a story it has been so far. And talking about that season, let's go through our venues as they've gone through so far and what still lies in wait. Well, as we can see here, that now making our way into the second half of the calendar, our fourth venue of choice is the Imola venue in Italy. Last time out, of course, in rounds 5 and 6, we made our way to another European venue of what was circuit Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium, and that circuit back on the 20th of October saw a very interesting change in the championships in both the gold and the silver classes, which we'll come to shortly. But indeed, the Spa-Francorchamps circuit really representing a key cornerstone of our calendar in the fact the circuit, a major challenging calendar circuit, and indeed we've got another major change coming up right at the end. And it's only fair that every third venue we seem to have a venue which really does put our drivers to the ultimate test. Before that, back in rounds 3 and 4, we were at Italy for the Monza circuit. Indeed, fast and furious then, it all being about the slipstream and the run into the heavy braking zones. And on the 6th of October, we saw many a driver battle their way down into the chicanes, heavy on the brakes all the way in, but pure commitment. And prior to that, speaking of commitment, all the way back in our season opening venue for rounds 1 and 2, we were in the United States of America, the state of Georgia, for the Bradstone circuit of Road Atlanta. On the 22nd of September, we got the season underway with the absolute rollercoaster ride of a road racing circuit. We saw many a Porsche come unstuck over the curves, but indeed many a driver find a way to flow freely across the circuit and find their way to success. But still, after today, we have 2 more venues to head to, including next time out on the 17th of November, it will be the Mount Panorama circuit, where we go down under to Australia, up and down the mountain in rounds 9 and 10, and that circuit needs no introduction. An absolutely legendary circuit, and one which is all about the ascent up and down the hill and keeping it clean over the hill and making sure to attack their way down the Conrad Straight. But more on that in 2 weeks' time. And then we'll be wrapping up with round number 11 at the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke VLN circuit, and that is the combined iteration of the Nürburgring circuit, so both the GP loop and also what is the Nordschleife loop, so the Green Hell loop if you will, and that will be on the 1st of December. Now, some of you may be wondering, why is round 11 in red text? Did we just miscolour the text? No, those of you who are eagle-eyed and have eagle-like memories, you'll know that last time we broadcasted, you will have seen that it was rounds 11 and 12. We had made a tweak to the calendar schedule, but there will only be one race in the season finale venue at the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke VLN, and we'll come to the specific details around that when we do get to our season finale. But just to give give you a little bit of insider insight, that single race is going to be an extended one, the longest one on the schedule for Season 4, and it's going to be an absolutely fascinating one, just as much about survival as it will be about outright pace, but we'll get to that in due course. And indeed, all of our broadcasts from last pair of rounds onwards are all live, so all the racing action you see on screen is live raw, and we can bring those replays of what exactly happens as things unfold on the tarmac. But going from our season ahead calendar to our standings as they currently stand, and we start off of course with the Gold Class. Our top group of drivers here, the Gold Class drivers, consist of 17 drivers from James Parker all the way down to Ian Manners there, and it is James Parker who leads the way at this point in time on 72 points. Only 2 points clear of David Sampson, but the general theme of the Gold Class last time out of circuit to Spa-Francorchamps was missed opportunities for everybody, and we mean everybody within the class. Nobody was able to put together a perfect or a near perfect score. If a driver did well in the sprint, they seemed to struggle in the feature and vice versa, and James Parker really embodying that more than most there, with a win in the sprint but taking home only 10 points in the feature in race number 6 or round number 6 of the calendar. And that means that right now he's only 2 points ahead of David Sampson, and the Canaan Esports driver also not having a great sprint race, only putting 4 points on the board but taking the win in the feature. And when we spoke to him in the post-round interview, he was saying to us that it was difficulty with regards to the race. He thought he could have gotten more out of the sprint race in round number 5, and we'll have to look forward to seeing whether he can bounce back today with 2 strong results across the board in Imola. But the key thing is, these 2 drivers have broken away from the pursuing pack, led by Richard Simnor there in P3, a margin now of 16 points between Sampson and Simnor, and on 54 points there, Simnor has got it all to do to try and reel the top 2 back in, or are they going to turn it into a 2-way fight for the championship crown come the end? And indeed right now it's critical that Simnor, Bickley and Pollard there, Stuart Bickley and Mike Pollard, P4, P5 respectively, find their way to work together, even though they may not be teammates, but work together in order to get themselves back into that championship fight, because otherwise they may find themselves becoming the fight of the best of the rest in P3 and downwards. Jack Atkinson there on what is 29 points in P6, a further 11 points behind from Mike Pollard, and Atkinson right now between 2 spaces, rock and a half place, 20 points accrued last time out, having missed rounds 1 and 2 all the way back at Road Atlanta, so therefore he does have a drop score technically in effect, and that means that Atkinson could become a major threat later on in the championship when we see those drop weeks applied as of round 10 or after round number 10. So after we've completed the race at Bathurst next time, when we go into our season finale, you'll see these championship points accounted for the drop week or the lowest number of points accrued over a week for a given driver, and then we'll really get a true reflection of how close it is, and it could be much closer up and down the standings compared to how it is now. But let's not count out Daniel Dan Weaver, that only 2 points behind in P7, and continuing to run good form and picking up great pace in what was the feature race at Spa-Francorchamps, ahead of Emil Koopmans on 26 points, only a point behind. And then we do have a 5-point gap to the pair of Gordon Ramsay and Ryan Davies, P9, P10, with Gordon Ramsay only ahead based on result count back at this point in time. Best of the rest there on 16 points, Andy Jones, and he's looking to try and close the gap to Ryan Davies, there's no doubt about that. But coming onto the silver class meanwhile, we can see that our leader at the moment by 4 points is Travis Linscombe Hatfield, and the American driver has proven time and time again that in a world full of variety and inconsistency from drivers, he is Mr. Consistent when it comes to the silver class. However, last time out, he was overshadowed by the driver in P2, Cameron Willesee, who pulled off an absolutely brilliant pair of back-to-back class wins, and indeed even picking up an overall podium in the feature race. It was a day to be dreamt of for Cameron Willesee, and it has jumped him all the way up into second place on 75 points. Now that's not to take away from Linscombe Hatfield, who in turn 2 second place finishes last time out of in-class, really seems to be the driver who's on point. But you do have to ask yourself the question, is Willesee here to stay, and could he continue to build that momentum tonight and take the lead of the championship after the racing is done? Jack Ward there in P3 on 66 points, only 9 points off of the top 2 right now. Let's not count him out, nor should we count out the likes of Steve Hughes and Simon Bamber there on 58 points and 42 points respectively. They're moving upwards towards the top 3, but still looking to battle between one another for P4, P5. But fortunately for them, they've got quite a sizable gap there of 19 points to Steve Kershaw in P6, who's more focused right now trying to break away from the likes of Alistair Hatcher and Glenn Humberstone, who are both on 18 points there in P7, P8, with Hatcher ahead of Humberstone based on result countback. And in P9, P10 we have Matty Bolt and Tom Davison, who, with Davison not in attendance last time and indeed missing rounds 1 and 2 as well, you would imagine that Tom Davison is really the driver to be able to contend and jump his way back up into the top 5 as the season progresses. And it's Danny Weston who leads the way outside of the top 10 in P11 there on 13 points, only ahead of Mark Oliver based on result countback, and only 1 point ahead of David Stewart. That's how close it is to try and get into the top 10 in the silver class. The stakes could not be higher. As we now come onto the team standings here, we can see the complexion of the team's championship is a bit of a hybrid of the gold and the silver championship, in the fact that we have our team that is leading the way by 30 points in the form of DCW Racing Blue, who have really focused hard on trying to keep those consistent points coming in round after round and breaking away from their pursuers. And that's exactly what they were able to achieve last time out at Spa-Francorchamps, accruing an extra number of points compared to their competitors. Although I say that, keep your eyes on Samsung Kane and Esports there in P2, in the fact they were able to pick up an extra point compared to DCW Racing Blue last time out, and that's why the gap is 30 points, not 31, and they are continuing to try and hunt down DCW Racing all the way to the finish. However, we have two DCW Racing outfits in this series, DCW Racing Red in P3 there, and only what is 12 points off of Samsung Kane and Esports. They are looking to take the fight to the second place outfit to really give DCW Racing Blue that breathing room to break away at the top of the standings. 88 Tech Racing Purple, meanwhile, in P4 there on 63 points, 13 points clear of Willesey Racing, who had a huge boost last time out at Spa-Francorchamps in P5, and then at Rabbit Hole Racing dropping down to P6 but continuing to put on the good form with the Saints P7, 88 Tech Racing Team Cyan in P8, and then we have Simam Racing followed by Effect Esports completing the top 10, and then only a point off of the top 10, Zilla Racing out on 9 points. They'll be looking to try and find a way to jump ahead of Effect Esports come the end of tonight. But as for our circuit for tonight, well, we mentioned it earlier and let's reintroduce it, the Autodromo Internazionale Enzo Dino Ferrari, named of course after the founding father of Ferrari and his son. This circuit originally being dedicated to Enzo's son Alfredo Dino Ferrari, who passed away unfortunately in 1956 before Enzo was to pass away. But after the passing away of Enzo, the circuit was renamed in memory of the pair. Originally the circuit was tributed to Dino and it was just known as the Autodromo Dino Ferrari, but now it has the name of Autodromo Internazionale Enzo Dino Ferrari in commemoration of the pair, father and son. And this circuit, located near the town of Imola in the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy, an absolutely picturesque region of Italy, it must be said, but this circuit is also a picture in itself, as we can see from the circuit map provided to us by simracingwiki.com. Consisting of 17 corners, this circuit is absolutely crammed full of chicanes, and these chicanes introduced for safety reasons due to some of the dramatic events in preceding decades of motorsport. But we can see there the run through the kink of 1 into the Tamburello chicane at turns 2, 3 and 4, where it's a fast left-right left sequence, which then sees our drivers charge all the way down to Villeneuve chicane of turns 5 and 6. Emerge from that, they'll have to make the way uphill into the hairpin of Tosa at turn number 7, an uphill cambered hairpin, while drivers will be encouraged to brake as late as possible and get on the power nice and early as they make the way up the hill even further to the highest point on the circuit arguably, and that is the Piratella left-hander at turn number 8. Make their way out of that Cuban trap limits, they make their way down the hill into Aquanerale, another technical chicane at turns 9 and 10, and going into the double right followed by the left-hander sequence before emerging and heading up the rise into the Alta chicane, the final chicane on the circuit, turns 11 and 12, the slightest pair of corners on the circuit with some very nasty apex curbs. Our drivers need to watch out for those, and as they emerge from them, they'll go down through the kink of 13 into the Ravazza combination at turns 14 and 15, the double left-hander, where tricky double left-hander where you need to be very patient on the throttle but get the power down in the dozen coming out of 15 to make your way all the way down the kink of 16 and across the start-finish line at turn number 17 to do another lap here. But the main theme, chicanes and connecting straight. Every time a driver misses out on getting on the throttle by even a millisecond, they are going to lose a lot of speed on the straight, and that is going to be the difference here between success and failure. But as we now look to our rules, a quick reminder of the rule set. Qualifying is a lone qualifying session whereby our drivers will all have an isolated instance of the circuit to put in their laps. Drivers shall have 8 minutes to set their best possible time. They do not have a limited number of laps. In terms of the races, they shall commence via a standing start, as is the tradition of Porsche Cup racing. The sprint race grid shall be set based on the results of qualifying. Meanwhile, the feature race grid shall be a partial reverse grid based on the results of the sprint race, with the top 8 positions inverted. So the winner overall of the sprint race starts P8, and conversely, the 8th place finisher in the sprint race will be starting on pole. There are no mandatory pit stop requirements in the sprint race or the feature race. We're not expecting any pit stops tonight unless somebody picks up damage, a puncher alternatively picks up a drive-through penalty or stop-and-go penalty, and a driver shall receive an aforementioned drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points. That's enough rules and regulations. I know what you're all here for. You're all here for the racing, and let's head down to the live cameras here as our drivers get ready to go racing and take you through the schedule for rounds 7 and 8. As we can see there, very shortly, in just under 1.5 minutes time, we'll be going into the qualifying session, 8 minutes to qualifying, and then we'll transition over to the sprint race grid. 12 minutes of racing there, and then we increase the time duration of the racing by 2.5 times for the 30-minute feature race that follows, albeit separated by a 2-minute break to give our drivers an opportunity to take a quick rest break before getting back into the cockpit and going racing once again. But speaking of going racing once again, I can tell you the one driver who will be absolutely feeling excited to go racing once again. You can see him in the rear of the picture there, albeit parking up briefly. That was Cameron Willisey. But also we have Tim Darracott here, the Effect Esports driver, as he makes his way out of the corners there of Tamburello and down into left-right combination of what is there, the Villeneuve chicane, and the number 18 driver flying on through. Indeed, many a driver all set to go racing here. And whilst we are waiting to go racing, if you do enjoy the broadcast, if you do enjoy tuning into the UK Sim Racing broadcast week in, week out, and you might be asking yourself the question, how can you potentially give back or show a little bit of support to UK Sim Racing beyond subscribing to the YouTube channel or to our Twitch channel? Well, did you know as well that you have a very quick way to give back to us, if you so desire, through our affiliates? For UK Sim Racing is affiliated with multiple sim racing and real-world motorsport companies, including Swelio Meta Sim Racing Coaching and Demon Tweaks. And if you head to our website, which you'll see in the background very shortly, there's our website known as uksimracing.co.uk. Today there is a page which you can see in the top left corner of your screen there, discount stroke affiliate links, where if you click on that button you'll be taken to our affiliates page, which will look like this. And if you click on any of our affiliates' images or their logos, if you will, you can make purchases through those links, which result in discounts for you as the consumer and a kickback to us as well as the affiliated company. And in turn, as UK Sim Racing is a non-profit organisation, all of our affiliate earnings shall be invested back into the community to fund future series like the future seasons of the Porsche Cup. And of course, funding those series means funding those prizes that go into the Cup as well, which means a little purchase can go a long way in supporting the continued growing strength of the UK Sim Racing community as we make our way towards the end of 2022, and there's plenty to look forward to in 2023. And also, if you are part of our UK Sim Racing Discord, you should always join. If you're not, well, did you know there's also some discount codes from our affiliates there on our Discord, and that's a reason to sign up alone. But speaking of signing up, all of our drivers are signed up to this, which is 8 minutes of qualifying as we head back to the live pictures here at the circuit. 30 seconds of qualifying already underway. Most of our drivers making their way out of the pit lane already. We are go for qualifying. And what's the key component here if you want to have a strong qualifying lap, I hear you ask? Well, simply put, what you've got to do at Imola is be smart with your throttle control and also bold on the brakes. Trail braking is one of the most critical factors in motorsport in terms of being able to trail the car into corner apex, gradually coming off the brake, and that means you carry more speed into corner apex through it and beyond as you get back on the throttle. But a smooth control of the brakes, particularly with these cars, of course, the Porsche Super Cup 992 cars, not having ABS, nor having traction control, so we've got no electronic systems to help the drivers be able to put the power down, nor with regards to their braking or the retardation of the car. It's all about smoothness here, and I can tell you this is one of those circuits which you can absolutely love. On paper, the circuit may look like a little bit of an eyesore given its configuration if you put it on a diagram, but I can tell you, having driven around it a number of times in the simulator myself, this is an absolutely wonderful flying circuit. And indeed, when you get in the zone, the circuit will feel as though it is coming alive. And that's exactly what the best laps and those pole laps in the class will look like, where the drive is absolutely smooth and they're coming alive with regards to that lap time. And speaking of coming alive, well, Richard Simnor right now making his way through the final corners very shortly. Indeed, coming out of Ravazza there and making his way to the timeline, and let's ride on board with him as he takes us around for a flying lap of the circuit. He's making his way across the timeline, and we bring up the dashboard in the bottom right so you can see the speed heading up into top gear there, 150 plus miles an hour. And by the time he gets down to the braking zone here for Tamburello, into turn number 2 he brakes, and as he comes all the way down the gearbox to third gear, bringing it over the left hander before the right hander, taking plenty of apex curve, and now powering through flat out through turn number 4 here, going up through the gearbox, using the runoff area, and now powering his way down towards the Villeneuve chicane at turns 5 and 6. Trailing in here, trying to go for a later apex and right in the curbing before bringing his way through turn number 6, and outwards he goes, and now up towards Tosa at turn number 7 onto the anchors, coming all the way down to second gear, an apex there of 47 miles an hour, and as he powers on out, now making his way up the hill towards Piratella. A tricky corner coming up here, it's a blind summit followed by a braking zone which is downhill into an off-camber corner, and as he brakes his way down the gearbox to third gear here, wait for it, and get on the power now as the car slides on out there, and he powers his way down towards Aqua Minerale. A tricky double right hand now into turns 9 and 10, dab the brakes initially, settle the car down, and then get on the brakes full, point the car straight before turning through the right hander at turn number 10, use plenty of curve in there to cut across and power all the way up now towards the Auto chicane, turns 11 and 12 for 8. It's been a nice lap so far, and as he makes his way onto the brakes here, coming all the way down to slice sequence of corners here, and as he makes his way on the road, taking a bit too much apex curve there at turn number 2, you can see the car was unsettled and he had to fight the counter steer on the car as he now makes his way down the hill for a King 13, the right hander coming out flat out here before stamping onto the brakes, the 100 metre board, coming all the way down the gearbox, the second gear, through Ravazza 1, turn number 14, through Ravazza 2 he goes as well, and here's about getting on the power nice and early as he upshifts the third on the apex there in order to settle the rear down. He can go full throttle all the way to the line, and what's this going to be from Richard Simnor as he comes across the line? It's been a smooth lap, and as he makes his way on through, it is going to be that a 44.332, a nice lap to kick off for Simnor, but I think there's going to be more time out there from all of our drivers, and we can see Stuart Bickley immediately going there P2 but demoted to P3 as we've got more drivers coming on in here with lap times, and we've seen a 43.901 come from David Sampson, also Misha Berger there on a 43.95. Well, Berger looking very close and feisty versus Sampson indeed. David Sampson seems to have been the driver who's been able to put those big lap times in, but also James Parker, a big name as well when we do consider those drivers have been strong in qualifying, not necessarily accounting for their race pace, but just that single lap qualifying pace being able to deliver. But we do see Berger here making their way on through the Villeneuve chicane once again, and as they come on through, qualifying now half complete in terms of time. We've only got 3.5 minutes to go, plus the final qualifying lap that drivers are on when we do hit the 8-minute count. And as we can see here, our gold driver making his way up the hill. We do look from a gold driver to one of our silver drivers, and in particular to Lewis Willisey here, who looking to perform just as strongly as Cameron Willisey last time out. And well, he may not be the driver in the spotlight right now compared to, I do believe it's his brother Cameron Willisey, although I do need to confirm that. But as we can see here, Lewis Willisey making his way around. They're going a little bit deep going into Pirotella, but still getting himself clocked in here. And indeed, tyre temperature, a very key factor at the Imola circuit. You really want those tyres to be as grippy as possible. You want that confidence in the car, because the more speed you can carry from corner to corner here, it's absolutely vital to your success. This is an absolutely flying circuit. It is all about just carrying that momentum, and as he makes his way into the braking zone here for the Alta chicane, if you can carry that momentum right, you're going to be doing that very well. And speaking of doing very well right now, whilst Willisey here, Lewis Willisey that is looking to come to the end of this lap and improve compared to his previous best. It is Cameron Willisey right now, fellow family member, who is currently silver provisional pole in P11, as we see Lewis Willisey making his way down into Ravazza 1. Nicely done there. You can see the rear brake disc lighting up like a Christmas tree light there. Christmas is only a couple of months away, would you believe it? As he makes his way out of Ravazza 2, heads to the line here, and Willisey looking fast in the first three subsectors. Didn't improve his subsector 4, but he comes to the line, and what's it going to be as he crosses the timeline? I think it was an imprint. He improves to 47.313, but still plenty of time out there, and I think still trying to find that ideal lap, as he didn't improve position there, and he's dropped to P20 with more laps coming in from drivers. But we do look from Lewis Willisey here to Jack Ward. And Jack Ward making his way out of what is Aquaminarale then, heading on through and up towards the Alta chicane, and currently P3 in the class provisional qualifying, but P15 overall. In fact, just demoted down a position there by class rival Stephen Kershaw, and Kershaw doing quite nicely there, getting ahead by a 10th. But we can see, looking how close it is, well, James Parker has taken provisional pole in the overall and also the gold class there by 2.5 tenths compared to Misha Berger. But what is interesting here is the contrast in lap times that are coming in. So James Parker has not quite improved. He almost improves there, albeit was half a tenth off his previous best, indeed the best overall. Misha Berger, meanwhile, well, they decide to park up. They're going to be making their way back to the pit lane. I think that's their qualifying session done and dusted. We do see here Mark Custers, meanwhile, but look at the gap between Berger, Koopmans and Sampson. It's only 1.5 tenths between them, and Berger and Koopmans in particular, and we would argue that Emil Koopmans in P3 and currently in the pit lane, so that's his qualifying session done and dusted, has perhaps been one of the most unfortunate drivers in this series so far. When he's been on a high, there's been a mistake in the races. Alternatively, it hasn't worked out in qualifying, and he's had to do the recovery effort in the races. Could it be Koopmans' day in the sun here in Italy today, or will he find himself once again being hit by that mixed runner form and that major contrast? As we do here, Daniel Dan Weaver has moved up to P6 there on a 44.082. We do have the best part of his 5 drivers into the 43s, and well, right now James Parker really looking as though he has sealed that pole position, unless there can be a response from anyone. Will David Sampson come into the timeline? He's decided no, it's not enough. He's going to be starting P3 at best. James Parker's coming into the pits. Misha Berger's still parked up there. Mark Custer's heading on down there. The brake disc absolutely going red hot on the rear, and as he makes his way through the final corner here, the final major corner of Vatsa 2, what can Custers do as he heads to the line? Is it going to be enough? He's improved over the majority of the lap, and as he comes to the timeline, P5 currently, can he go higher than Sampson? Well, we're not going to see the end of the lap because qualifying just ends there as he's about to cross the line. So let's take you through the grid for the purposes of round number 7. So this is how our drivers line up then for round number 7, the sprint at Imola. On pole, overall in the gold class, it is James Parker from 88 Tech Racing at Team Purple, joined on the front row by Misha Berger from the Saints. Behind them on row number 2, Emil Koopmans and David Sampson, followed by Mark Custers and Daniel Weber in at P5, P6 on row number 3. The DCW Racing blue driver there qualifying well for his team and looking to take the fight to the top 5. Mike Pollard from DCW Racing blue lines up P7, joined by Tim Darracott, the privateer, on the 4th row. Then we have Richard Simnor and Joe Newman line up P9, P10. The Simman Racing driver Joe Newman not quite having the qualifying session I think he desired, and he's got a way to fight his way up the order to get towards that top 5. Andrew Jones and Stuart Bickley there line up P11, P12, the two DCW Racing drivers from the sister teams of Red and Blue. Well, I think Stuart Bickley there having one of his weaker qualifying sessions of the season, but he'll look to try and have a better race for it. And then on row at number 7, we have Jack Atkinson starting ahead of silver pole sitter Cameron Willesey there for Willesey Racing P14. Then Simon Bamber and Thomas Davison line up the two silver drivers on row number 8, followed by the combination on row 9 of Ryan Davies and Stephen Kershaw P17, P18. Behind them we have Jack Ward from Willesey Racing and Travis Linscombe Hatfield from Rabbit Hole Racing making up our 10th row. Travis Linscombe Hatfield having his weakest qualifying session of the season there, P20. Jack Ward having a better qualifying session compared to recent run. Glenn Humberstone from 88 Tech Racing Team at Cyan there, P21, starting off row number 11, joined by Matty Wild from DCW Racing Red, P22. On row number 12 we have the combination of Lewis Willesey and Alistair Hatcher, and then behind them we have Richard White starting last but not least, P25 there, the privateer. 9, whilst he didn't qualify well, he's got plenty of racing to come. And speaking of racing to come, we are only moments away from getting to the grid and getting it underway. And there's the grid in the background. We are only 10 seconds away from the lights. James Parker starting on pole. Can he convert it from pole? We await the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for race number 1 at Imola. Round number 7's underway in the Porsche Cup. A couple of drivers stalling at the back of the grid there, but the gold drivers get underway quite nicely. And James Park having a phenomenal start. And meanwhile, Emil Koopmans on the offensive versus Misha Berger into turn 2. We can see Sampson there going round the outside early on and gaining the position on Koopmans, who was caught blindsided by that as they make the way out of Tamburello and down towards Villeneuve. Further back, meanwhile, we can see the DCW Racing drivers swapping places. And as they make their way down to the braking zone, Custers there battling with Koopmans. They come through Villeneuve at turn 6 and make their way up towards Tosa, and Custers there couldn't quite get it done, but making his intention clear. He's not waiting around, and right now Mark Custers, he's gained 1 place almost at the start. Now can he actually find the place he so desires, or will he fall backwards towards Weber? We'll have to find out. Meanwhile, further back we can see Travis Linscombe Hatfield has gained places and got ahead of Stephen Kershaw as they make their way up the hill, and Kershaw's under pressure from Ryan Davies, who's had a very difficult start and dropped down a place as they make their way into Piratella, but cold tyres catching out Kershaw there as he runs long and wide as they come down through Pilatera. And meanwhile, a bit ahead there we can see Thomas Davison trying to go up the inside of Joe Newman into Ac Minerale. Well, you don't normally do that unless you've got absolute guts and glory. And meanwhile, a bit further behind, Andrew Jones parked in the middle. I'm not sure what's happened to Jones, but it's been an instant. He's trying to get the car back up to speed, but everyone has to go around him. Meanwhile, looking a bit further up the road, we can see here Newman under huge pressure from Davison, and Davison not giving up here and pushing the fight. There's no doubt about it, but as they make the way on down the hill, we can see here as we try to reload the overlay, and we do get our circuit map back up on the screen. Most of our drivers having a successful first lap, no major incidents, -1 for Andrew Jones. We'll take a look back at that shortly, but meanwhile we look to the front of the field, and after 1 lap of racing, it is James Parker who leads by a margin of 5/10 and Misha Berger in P2. Then following them as they come across the line, it's David Sampson P3 gaining 1 place on the start versus Emil Koopmans P4. Then we have Mark Custard P5, who's going to try and make it P4 very shortly as they come down to the braking zone here for Tamburello once again. He can't quite find it, but Koopmans goes deep. The car cuts across the grass, and as he brings it back, he loses 2 places to the price of 1 mistake. But it's more than that as Pollard comes on through, and also now Richard Simnor's coming on through. My goodness me, and Koopmans just cannot get a break as they make the way down to Villeneuve here. Left into right they go, and Tim Darracott's looking at this and thinking, can I have a place as well, please? And he's going to go for it as they make the way up into Tosa. He's going to try and go the long way round here, and Koopmans will make him have to really work the car, and Darracott instead finds himself falling backwards as they make the way up the hill towards turn number 8 going into Piratella. Jack Atkinson behind watching on here, the privateer in the 26 cars. They make the way into the braking zone, but no change. Meanwhile, speaking of change, well, that is Mark Custers there going wide out of Piratella. We saw that early on from some drivers on lap number 1, and lap number 2 it's Custers to make the mistake, and now the Samsung Canaan esports driver here has to bring it back together, having lost the place to Weber and Pollard as they make the way out of Ac Minerale and up towards the Alta chicane. But speaking of Ac Minerale, let's take a look back at what happened to Andrew Jones on the previous lap. So this was on lap number 1, and focus here on Andrew Jones, the 441 machine. A bit of contact there from the number 24 car, and as he made his way out of that, well, the car just dropped off the curb there, and as it dropped off, the car got kicked round to the left, and it all went wrong for Jones. Now, he was in a small bit of contact with the 24 machine of Stuart Bickley, but I don't think that was the trigger effect for the spin there. I think that's where the car came down the curve. Now, whether that small bit of contact perhaps unsettled the rear left suspension, we're not 100% sure on that, but it has not gone the way that he's wanted it to go. It has it for Jones, as meanwhile we're hearing that Ward and Humberstone have both been involved in incidents on circuit and over the course of lap number 2. But we come back to live pictures right now, and as we do look at live pictures, we look to Lewis Willisey here, who's trying to chase after Richard White in the battle for P20. That's P7 in the silver class as they make the way across the line, and Willisey's going to have a good run here. As you can see, White having to go defensive very early on, and with this being an open setup series, I wonder if Willisey's running a very low amount of downforce here to get the straight line speed in the toe, and as they make the way into Tamburello, he has to back out. There's no way through this time around. But definitely showing signs that he's very strong on the straights and also coming out of Ravazza too. But as they make the way through Tamburello, the gap stabilises for a brief moment before they make the way onto the next chicane. But Willisey definitely looking to pounce here and gain some places versus White, and will perhaps Ward ahead as well. But a bit of space open up between the silver class rivals. They make the way on down the round once again. Just behind there's Glenn Humberstone, who was involved in a bit of an incident earlier on which saw him go off track. And we're just going to take a look back at what exactly happened. This was only moments ago for Glenn Humberstone, and at the time, well, not sure his position, but he was running his way into Tosa, and I think the car's going to go a bit wide. No, in fact, the car's going to kick round there, and he's just caught the car in time. That could have been curtains, but Humberstone, they're showing great car control to get the car stopped and then bring it on its way, but losing 4 places for the price of one mistake as we now return to live pictures here. And indeed, we look our way a little bit further up the field to Stephen Kershaw, who finds himself the privateer in the 247 car, trying to chase down Linscombe Hatfield, who has gained multiple places since the start of this race, but in return finds himself under pressure from Joe Newman behind the gold driver, who's going to try and pick his way on through. But can he find his way on through? That will be the big question as they make the way on down. Well, Newman getting closer and closer into Ravazza 1, and as he makes his way through Ravazza 2, I think Newman is going to be looking for the move in the run down towards Tamburello. We ride on board here as he builds up the speed of SimRacing drive. This will be the tail where he's running a lot of downforce on the car, or a low amount of downforce compared to Kershaw. And as they make the way across the timeline here, he's getting closer and closer. Now, can he go for the move? Kershaw covers the inside, he thinks about it, he moves back to the outside. Newman's going to go on the inside here, onto the brakes he goes. I think Kershaw thinking in the end it's better to let him go rather than battling the driver who's not in my class. Meanwhile, Humberstone versus Willisey here. That's Lewis Willisey just ahead of Glenn Humberstone as they swap places. Richard White has dropped behind. I think White's had an off track at Ravazza 2 from what I'm hearing, which cost him about 3 seconds, and that's why he's dropped behind the pair. But Humberstone very close to Willisey here in the battle with P20, P7 in the silver class as they make the way out of Tamburello and down towards Villeneuve. But as they come charged on through here, 6 minutes complete, 6 minutes to go. We're at the halfway stage of the sprint. We do look a little bit further back up into the gold class here inside the top 10, and well, not too much has happened recently in the battle inside the top 10. Everyone right now looking at one another and trying to piece together where they can go on the offensive in the limited time remaining. But the key thing is here that DCW Racing have definitely made the start of this race work very well. They've got 2 drivers now up into the top 5, and they've got a huge number of drivers inside the top 10 right now. I believe it's 4 drivers in total, so they all make their way through. Also lovely camera angles where you can see all the drivers coming on through, and it looks like poetry in motion. But I can tell you right now, it's not as peaceful as that. They're all trying to push as hard as possible as they make the way on down towards Ravazza once again. As we look from P7 up to P2 here, Misha Berger right now, the Saints driver, looking to go on the offensive versus Parker, but Parker is opening up that gap by a couple of tenths a lap. That last lap, James Parker set the fastest lap race at 43.85, 4 tenths faster than Berger. And as he comes to the timeline this time around, what's it going to be for James Parker as he crosses the line at 44.32? Meanwhile, Misha Berger at 45.1. Berger is struggling at this point in the race. That's 8 tenths lost on a single lap, and David Sampson's looking at this, and I think eyeballing a potential P2 slot as they make the way through the chicane once again to Tamburello. Now as they exit out here, of course, there's that big consideration of the top 8 inverted grid for the feature race in round number 8, and right now the man on the money will be Emil Koopmans, who's chasing after Richard Simnor, and well, Koopmans here trying to regain places they lost earlier on as he makes his way into Villeneuve, and Richard Simnor right now under huge pressure as they come out of Villeneuve and up towards Tosa. You can see the DCW Racing red driver covering the inside, but goes a bit deep as they emerge out of Tosa, and in return what this is doing, it's bunching them all up as they make their way up towards Piratella. And whilst you can't see it right now as we ride on board the gearbox here, Simnor, I can tell you that right behind Koopmans is Darracott, Tim Darracott, and also Stuart Bickley. They're all looking at this and wanting to get into that P8 position. And And the reason being, of course, it's understandable they all want that opportunity to be on pole for the feature race and some major points up for grabs. But right now, Simnor here really having to work the car hard as is Koopmans, and Koopmans staying as close as possible. Meanwhile, somebody's got it a little bit wrong further back, and I think that's Darracott who's got it horrendously wrong, coming through Aqua Minerale. He's gone for a spin. What on earth has happened to Tim Darracott? Well, we're going to take a look back very quickly now, and as he made his way on down the hill, well, it looked absolutely smooth to enter, but does the car step out under braking here? It does indeed. The rear just starts to let go, and I think she's carrying a little bit too much momentum on the rear of the car, but nothing major beyond a spin, although that's major in itself as he turns the car around and gets himself back up to speed. But whilst that's happened, we return to live pictures and we look to our P2 driver here. Not too many more laps to go, and Misha Berger right now really under pressure to hold on to the second spot on the overall podium in the gold podium versus David Sampson. And a bit further back here is Emil Koopmans, who right now has got the mother of all runs as they make the way down towards turn number 2, in towards Tamburello they go, onto the brakes, and Koopmans going to look around the outside. He's going to go all in here and try and do what Sampson did at the start of the race. He's going to make it work, or is he? There's a bit of contact between the two of them, but they give one other space. Koopmans finds himself run a little bit wide as they come on down. Well, both drivers, they're really fighting for the space coming into Villeneuve, and Koopmans has to back out as he takes a huge amount of curb, and as he does, that sends him over the bumps, or the sleeping police, as we like to refer to him, and Koopmans there losing out and now finds himself under attack from Jack Atkinson, and we can see that Stuart Bickley has gained the place and therefore moves up to P8. Well, now it's critical juncture for Koopmans, who drops to P10 there with Atkinson getting the better run out of Tosa, and as they make the way into Piratello, my goodness, that could have been much more different. That shows you the racing room respect given between Koopmans and Simnor as they made the way on throw, and in the end it's Richard Simnor who proves off a successful defence, and in return Bickley picks up the pieces and picks up a P8 in the process. And DCW Racing right now I think will be chuffed with that, but they've still got more laps to go, 2 more laps to go to be precise. In fact, I think it actually may only be 1 lap given the fact the leaders are only making their way into the kink of 13 right now, and we've only got just under 2 minutes left on the board. We'll have to wait and see whether we've got 1 or 2 more laps remaining by the time Parker crosses the line. But meanwhile, Koopmans there in a very tricky situation, and let's just take a look back at how that played out. So it's in the run down towards the Tamburello chicane here, battling side by side into the braking zone, and well, Koopmans there going all in terms of trying to go round the outside, and to be fair, getting ahead initially, but it was the transition here into turn number 4 we see had to lift off the throttle slightly to give the space, with Simnor battling on the inside, then contact between the two of them caused Koopmans to lose a little bit of momentum. But now coming into Villeneuve, they're unsighted with the fact they had Simnor to look at right in front of him, and for Koopmans that could have gone a lot worse, but fortunately he got away with that hit in the curb. He did lose places in the process. But now looking back to live pictures here, a minute to go, we've only got 1 more lap on the clock as I'm to understand it, and as we return to those live pictures, David Sampson here falling back away from Misha Berger, and I think Sampson's actually made a mistake off camera given the fact he's fallen backwards towards Weber and also Pollard, and right now DCW Racing picking up the places and just looking infallible compared to their peers in front, as Sampson right now I think focusing on converting the start into what is a 3rd place finish, that final spot on the overall podium as he makes his way up through Piratello. But Weber behind here also close, but again these drivers will be thinking it's just a couple of points being picked up here compared to the big spoils of what will be the feature race. So perhaps pipping Sampson to the post won't be a necessity, but you can imagine they want to go for every single point if they can, and Koopmans right now a bit further back in this procession thinking about that P10 position, having missed out so far. Can he find a way back past 2 drivers here come the finish? I don't think he's got enough time to do it, so we're hearing that Simon Bamber's had to jump to the pits due to an incident, but meanwhile Koopmans is still stuck behind Atkinson as they come through Alta, but as they make the way down towards Ravazza, we do look from them to our race leader here, James Parker, who right now hooks up the penultimate corner, and now the final corner, major corner on the circuit, and we'll have him started on pole. He put the car on pole by a significant margin, and he's led this one from the start, and he'll take it to the finish. James Parker is your winner in round number 7 of the Porsche Cup Season 4, your overall and gold winner ahead of Misha Berger there, who you can see crosses the line P2, and it's David Sampson P3, just ahead of Daniel Dan Weaver P4, Mike Pollard P5, and Mark Custers P6, and it'll be Richard Simnor P7 there ahead of Stuart Bickley P8, Jack Atkinson P9, Emil Koopmans P10, and Thomas Davidson comes on home to take the win in the silver class. Well, we're not 100% sure the story of what is the silver class, but Davidson picking up the win there ahead of Travis Linscombe Hatfield, Joe Newman P13, and Cameron Willesee, well, in the end finishing P14, and well, he'll be happy with a podium ahead of Stephen Kershaw, Ryan Davis P16, Jack Ward P17, who comes across the line next, Lewis Willesey P18, Tim Darracott P19, Richard White P20, and he completes the top 20 there, P7 in the silver class, Andrew Jones P21, and then it is Glenn Humberstone after Jones, who will finish a little bit further back by 4 seconds, and Andrew Jones not having the race he wanted. Indeed, Glenn Humberstone the same here, as we see the 88 Tech Racing Team Scion driver coming to the line, and then it will shortly be Alistair Hatcher who comes on through to take P23, followed by Matty Wild, the last driver to finish on the lead lap. Only one driver finishing more than one lap down, or at least a single lap down, that was Simon Bamber, but Matty Wild there completing 24 finishes out of 25 on the lead lap and P10 in the silver class. But what a brilliant race number one. And whilst we do have 2 minutes to give our drivers a bit of a breather, let's take you through those race results, should they be available, subject to any stewards' inquiries. Well, here are the results, hopefully, if they do come on through, and there they are. James Parker being confirmed there as the winner and the gold class winner ahead of Misha Berger there by 1.8 seconds, and Parker absolutely on form in this first race of the day, ahead of David Sampson in P3 there, and Sampson holding on to finish by 4 tenths to Daniel Weaver in P4 and Mike Pollard P5. Mark Custer's P6, making some early ground, but not quite able to convert that into a top 5 finish. He'll be starting P3 in race number 2, and then it will be Richard Simnor P7 there, who starts on the front row. But the pole sitter for what will be the round number 8 feature race here at Imola will be Stuart Bickley, picking up where it was dropped by Emil Koopmans towards the very end of the sprint race, and Bickley will be your pole sitter. It's a DCW Racing lockout on the front row. Jack Atkinson at P9 there, he will not benefit from the top 8 inverted grid, and Emil Koopmans there completing the overall top 10, and the run of gold drives before you get to the silver winner in round number 7 of the sprint race. Thomas Davidson ahead of Travis Linscombe Hatfield P12, Joe Newman P13, and separating Cameron Willesey from the rest of his silver podium peers, but Cameron Willesey there P14, taking that P3 in the silver class ahead of Stephen Kershaw, Ryan Davies, Jack Ward, Lewis Willesey. And as we come down to the remainder of the field, Tim Darracott P19, Richard White P20, Andrew Jones P21, Glenn Humberstone P22, Alistair Hatcher P23, Matthew Wild P24, and again that very late jump to the pits and thereby finishing multiple laps down, Simon Bamber there, the privateer, P25. But with the results on in, we do get ready to go racing once again very shortly, and well, only 15 seconds before we start to form the grid. But one absolute thriller of a race number 1, and we've still got plenty of racing to go here in race number 2 at Imola. Round number 8 coming up very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, and well, how will it all play out? Let's find out. And as we do just take a brief breather there, the grid is now being transitioned over to, and let's take you through the grid for round number 8 of the Porsche Cup Season 4, brought to you by UKSimRacing. So the grid stands as follows. Our drivers get set. Stuart Bickley taking a reverse grid pole there, overall and gold pole for DCW Racing Blue. Joined on the front row by the sister teammate from DCW Racing Red of Richard Simnor. Mark Custers and Mike Pollard line up on row number 2, with Daniel Dan Weaver and David Sampson there line up row 3 at P5, P6. Misha Berger, P7, the Saints driver having a phenomenal result in race number 1, alongside James Parker there, your winner in race number 1 here at Imola, round number 7, the 88 Tech Racing Team at Purple driver, and there's Jack Atkinson and Emil Koopmans who start off our 5th row at P9, P10. Then on the 6th row, silver pole sitter Thomas Davison, the winner of course in the previous race, with Travis Linscombe Hatfield alongside, and behind them on row number 7, the combination of Joe Newman from Simam Racing and Willesey Racing's Cameron Willesey P14. P15 there started off our 8th row, Stephen Kershaw joined by Ryan Davies, and then we do have Jack Ward who starts in P17 there, starting off our 9th row, joined by Lewis Willesey P18. They're the two silver drivers together. Tim Darracott P19 joined by Richard White on the 10th row, and then Andrew Jones and Glenn Humberstone on row number 11, Alistair Hatcher and Matty Wild row number 12, and then last but not least, starting from the back of the grid, will be Simon Bamber on our 13th row P25. And can he turn things around after a difficult race number 1 here at Imola? We'll have to wait and see. But the big question mark, of course, with 4 DCW Racing drivers line up in the top 5 slots, that you could see them there in formation surrounding Mark Custers, the lone non-DCW Racing machine. Can DCW Racing pull off a huge result for both teams, which will enable them to jump their way up the team's championship as they make their way into the second half of the season? That will be the challenge for them. But I can also promise you that James Park here, starting P8, will be looking to cut his way through the field and make his way onto that podium. But also keep your eyes out for Thomas Davison and Travis Linscombe-Hatfield, started together on row number 6. Linscombe-Hatfield, of course, the championship leader in the silver class, the rabbit hole racing driver, will look to try and pick up some more places. But the grid is set, and as the 2-minute countdown is complete, all of our drivers are now ready to go, unless I'm very much mistaken, although we may have just a few more seconds before we get underway. And Alistair Hatcher makes his way to the grid, and now we await the lights in the next moment or two. The gridding process is complete. We await the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go here for round number 8 of the Porsche Cup at Imola as they get underway and charge down towards turn number 2. A slow start for a number of drivers, but look at David Sampson trying to go around the outside there, gaining places left, right and centre as he tries to push it all the way into Tamburello. Can't find it in the end, but Pollard and Weber here side by side, the two DCW Racing teammates crowding one another together and forming a rolling roadblock as they hold on to P3, P4, and Mark Custer's there having the slowest start of the top 6. They make their way down into the Villeneuve chicane, and further on down the order, Thomas Davison just about holding off Travis Linscombe-Hatfield, in fact going hunting after Atkinson and Emil Koopmans. Koopmans goes a bit deep there, and as a result now tries to hold off Travis Linscombe-Hatfield, who tries to go round the outside here at Tosa, and Hatfield backs off and decides it's not worth it as they make the way on up the hill. But a bit further back, Alistair Hatcher as well, you can see there in the ATEC Tech Racing Team Purple machine, trying to make progress versus Lewis Willisey, and also holding off Simon Bamber, and Simon Bamber gaining 3 places since the start of this race. The UK SR Privateer here trying to make it another place. He can't quite find it at the moment, but putting the pressure on here as they make the way on down the hill. And Bamber looks to go into Aqua Minerale side by side, but thinks better of it as he backs out. But meanwhile, Koopmans here versus Davison, and right now Koopmans finds his way on past Davison. We're not quite sure how that's happened, but we'll take a look back at it very shortly as Davison now under huge pressure here. As you can see, battling side by side into Alta, and Linscombe-Hatfield trying to go around the outside, but he can't find it at the moment as they make the way out of Alta and down towards Ravazza. But Davison really under a lot of pressure, and in fact Linscombe-Hatfield's going to get the run, and I think Davison's had a slowdown in fact, and that contributes to why he's been so slow over the run. Oh goodness me, onto the grass there goes the car, and I think, unless I'm mistaken, that's Davidson heading out towards the barrier. Goodness me, I'm not sure what's happened there, but it's gone so wrong for our sprint winner here in the silver class. But Travis Linscombe-Hatfield now is your leader in the silver class as he heads on to lap number 2. But let's give you a recap of that field after one lap. After one lap of racing here in round number 8, it is Richard Simnor who leads after a strong start, jumping ahead of teammate Stuart Bickley in the run to turns 1 and 2. But right now DCW Racing Blue leading the way ahead of teammates Mike Pollard and Daniel Dan Weaver, P3, P4. It's Mark Custer's P5, followed by David Sampson in P6. They make the way into the Villeneuve chicane once again, followed up then in P7 by Misha Berger, who stays strong and looks out for potential opportunities, followed by James Parker in P8, who hasn't lost any ground but hasn't made any so far, but playing it smart and waited his turn. Then it's Jack Atkinson at P9, Emil Koopmans in P10 there. A difficult start for Emil Koopmans, but still recovering compared to how it could have started for him. And it's Travis Linscombe-Hatfield in P11 right now, and we can see that in the rear of the picture, one driver going a bit deep, a UKSR machine going a bit deep there, and I believe that may have been Simon Bamber. And Linscombe-Hatfield right now under pressure from Willisey. Karen Willisey up the inside and gains the lead of the silver class, then moving up into P11 as they make the way on down towards what is Aqua Minerale, and Cameron Willisey coming like an absolute missile in the run to Piratella and getting the job done there. Now can he convert it? That's the question. Can he break away, or will he find himself in oscillation with his silver peers behind? Well, I think the big consideration here is that Joe Newman right now, the gold driver you see there in the Simam Racing 97 Porsche, right now trying to find his way past Linscombe-Hatfield, and the gold driver wants to get his way into that top 10 fight. But he's got a long way to go indeed. He's already 4 seconds off of the top 10 as they make the way down through turn number 13. Meanwhile, a bit further back, Simon Bamber has found his way past Lewis Willisey. We'll just catch the tail end of that overtake coming out of the Alta chicane, and well, as they make the way down, Tim Darracott there gaining the place versus Jack Ward. Ward going very deep into Ravazza 1, but brings the car back together, and Darracott sneaks it up the inside, and right now the privateer makes his way on through and completes another lap. But as he makes his way on down, we look here to Daniel Dan Weaver and Mark Custer's battling side by side. There's contact between them, and they both go round together, and they part the seas to let the rest of the Porsche back through. And goodness me, well, you can see both of them trying to turn it on around, but for Custer, he's been able to get it onto the gravel and therefore get back up to speed. Meanwhile, Daniel Dan Weaver has to park there and wait for the field to come through. But whilst that's happened, Jack Atkinson right now has Koopmans all over his 6 as they make the way up the hill, and you can see Koopmans looking around the outside here. This is now a battle for P7. overall in the gold class, and as they make the way out of Tosa, Koopman's really trying to push as much as he can. You can understand from Emil Koopman's perspective, he's just not having the run he wants, even though he's got the pace in the car, he's got the graph behind the wheel, but he just cannot get the two to line up for the whole duration. And as they make the way on down here towards Aqua Minerale right now, Atkinson I think has got a formidable foe who's really trying to pick him off because they come off. You can see how close there Koopman is as we ride on board with the aforementioned Dutchman as he makes his way down towards the auto chicane. Now as he makes his way into the braking zone here, it's going to be a very tricky one for him to make the pass. We hear Humberstone's picked his way past White in the battle for P20 overall. That's P7 in the silver class. His overtake's happening further down, but Koopman's right now falling back a little bit after the run, coming out of all there. I think trying to size himself up for the run down the start finish straight towards what is the Tamburello chicane. For the simple reason here, if he gets ahead now, he doesn't really gain anything. In fact, he becomes more fragile and open to a counter-attack from Atkinson, but this is where it matters most. Now, who gets the better run of Ravazza? It's Atkinson who gets a stronger run. And you can see the gap has actually opened up by a couple hundreds as they make the way down the start finish straight all the way. They go on to the next lap, and only now is Koopman starting to gain. And I wonder if Koopman's is running quite a lot of downforce, a lot of rear wing on the car, because he's not gaining in the toe at all. Now, to be fair, Atkinson does have the toe of Parker ahead, but at the same time, you can see that Koopman is flowing through the chicane. I think he's got a lot of downforce on. He needs to make the move in these corners. You see Atkinson defending there as they make the way into Villeneuve. Koopman's trying to get him out of position as they make the way through turn 5 into 6. And you can see Koopman's trying to set up the cutback, but Atkinson there wise to it and just parks the car and says, we're going to go slow together if you don't mind. And as they make the way through Tosa hairpin here, you see Atkinson just able to position the car enough at the moment to be able to frustrate Koopman as they make the way up the hill. Meanwhile, further back, Ryan Davies here, you just see going past the camera very shortly, making his way up the hill. The privateer in the 27 car here, making his way up into P10 in the gold class, P13 overall, getting ahead of Tim Darracott only moments ago, but Darracott trying to come back at him very shortly as they make the way on through, and as they come down towards Aqua Minerale right now, Davies having to hold on here, and Darracott not showing any signs of lifting off, but the pressure on neither is Stephen Kershaw ahead. Right now the silver driver, to be fair, under pressure from the gold pair as they make the way all the way out towards Alton as they come charging on down. Well, wait to see how this will break open, if at all. I think right now they're all going to be patient and pick on one another gradually. But meanwhile, speaking of being patient, they're side by side between Simon Bamber and Jack Ward. And Bamber, they're going in the inside in order to try and go around the outside at Alta. And there, well, Jack Ward getting the elbows out, saying, you're not coming through, thank you, as they make the way down through 13 leading towards Ravazza once again. And onto the brakes they go. Bamber up the inside. He's gone very late, but goodness me, Simon Bamber gets it done. And well, say what you will about his first race here at Imola, right now he's showing he's not perturbed by it, and he's trying everything at this to try and gain some points and places. He makes his way on through and on to the next lap. Now, do keep in mind, of course, that this race much longer compared to the first race today, and that means tyre wear is going to be a consideration. What's a bigger consideration right now is Darracott up the inside, and Ryan Davies a P13 overall, P10 in the gold class, and Darracott right now absolutely flying through Tamburello, and I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to pick on driver in front, and that is Stephen Kershaw. Meanwhile, making his way up into the top 10 for the first time. Well, I'm hearing it is Cameron Willis who's just gained a position up into that top 10, and also Joe Newman, I think, going a bit slower, and Atkinson ahead, also under pressure from Emil Koopman. So speaking of Atkinson, here he is, and Koopman's looking around the outside in the run towards Piratella. Now, this is going to be brave for Koopman's if he's going to go around the outside. I think he's going to look for the... No, he's going to commit to it here, and Atkinson, to be fair, shows in the space, and as they make the way down the hill, well, further up the road, Pollard and Bickley are battling, but meanwhile, Atkinson holding Koopman's at bay, and here is Pollard and Stuart Bickley behind him, and Bickley, I think, has got a slow down. He's going quite slowly coming out of Minerale, unless there's a mistake. Well, it's battling side by side here in the run to Alta, but Sampson comes up through and gains P3, and Sampson very gradually, oh goodness me, Bickley turning as he comes out of Alta, and the car goes round, and that's going to be very costly for the DCW Racing Blue driver. And well, he's been picked off, and now he's got a spin to go with it as well. And you can see there Joe Newman trying to come on through, and I think Newman will just about get ahead. I think it's going to be close here. Now, will Bickley try to go all in on the brakes? No, he thinks better of it and waits his turn as they make the way down for Ravazza 1 and into Ravazza 2. They've got Cameron Willesey behind the silver leader at this time, having picked his way past Travis Linscombe Hatfield. And meanwhile, we're hearing that Mark Custers has gained another place versus Andrew Jones in the run down the hill. And in fact, we take a look back at what happened to Stuart Bickley only moments ago. Well, this was in the run to and Misha Berger coming on through here, and well, Bickley there just going for the turn as he just took a little bit too much speed. But I think we did also see a bit of a move being made earlier on Bickley, although we're not going to get it. In fact, we will get it, and this was the move from Sampson, and there it is, Bickley going slow. He went wide coming out of Aqua Minerale, and that explains what happened to Bickley. And Sampson on the inside there goes in and gets the job done as they made the way out, and then the subsequent events happen. Meanwhile, in terms of other replays out on circuit, we are going to try and get back to some of the battling that happened elsewhere on circuit as we return to live pictures. And right now, Jones here, well, Andrew Jones, the DCW Racing red yellow machine there, going out wide at Tosa and finding himself losing the place to Ryan Davies, who went up the inside into the hairpin. And as they make the way down towards Piratella, we're only 10 minutes into the 30 minutes of racing, still plenty of time and stories to tell. And goodness me, well, Imola right now definitely proving to be a very feisty circuit for the 992 machines. They make the way in towards Aqua Minerale once again. And right now, Jones, Davies and Custers, they may be battling for P10 in the gold class or P11 overall, but they are fighting hard for it. And who can blame them as they make the way on towards the Alta chicane. Speaking of hard fighting, well, Misha Berger moments ago making the move on what was Stuart Bickley, and right now you can see here Berger under pressure from James Parker, and well, Parker, to be fair, has not really put a foot wrong, and he hasn't really pushed the tempo too much here. He's just gaining places very gradually, by accretion almost. He makes his way down towards turn number 2, and as they make the way across that timeline here, will Parker look for the move on Berger? Berger covers him off there, pulls the inside, trying to stand the toe as well of Sampson, and I think Sampson conscious that he does not want Parker getting on past Berger, but you can see there the potential switchback from Parker under braking. Couldn't quite sell the dummy there, a bit too close for comfort, but he's thinking about it as the 88 Tech Racing driver as they make the way out to Tamburello for what for them is the 7th time of asking, and make the way on down into Villeneuve. And as they come into the second of the chicane sequence, we are hearing that Simon Bamber, oh goodness me, we cut to Simon Bamber is trying to pick his way on past, I think that was Andrew Jones there, and Bamber goes on around. I think there's more to that story than meets the eye, and well, we're about to find out. Was in the run down towards turn number 2, and Bamber here you can see on the left of 2 cars. Right now as the camera turns around, they make the way underneath the gantry, and Bamber there on the inside making the move, trying to go for the move, and as they came on through here side by side through the 6, a bit too much curve there, and that unsettled the car, and that in combination I think he was trying to turn the car away from Andrew Jones' DCW Racing machine, and in the end Bamber went on around. Unfortunately for Bamber after what has been an absolutely courageous run so far, but now he's got some more work to do as we're hearing that Thomas Davison as he's known in full, well, he with that instant much earlier on, of course, we saw him go straight on at what was the entry to Ravazza into the wall. He's had to retire the car. We've had confirmation, and that's very unfortunate for Davison, of course, our winner in race number 1 here at Imola, round number 7 in the sprint race for the silver class. Meanwhile here we see Travis Linscombe Hatfield falling a little bit further back, and now stuck behind Lewis Willisey, and I think trying to find his way into that P6 position in the silver class, P20 overall. But a bit further back, Matty Wild finds his way past Alistair Hatcher, who has had an off-track recently, and Will Wild picking up another place. But meanwhile, we look a bit further up the order, and this is Cameron Willisey, your silver leader, battling with Stuart Bickley here in the battle for P9 overall. Well, we saw Cameron Willisey really dig deep to hold the gold drivers at bay at Spa in the feature, and now he's trying to dig deep to pick his way past them in the feature here at Imola, and Bickley holding on right now for P9 overall. Onto the brakes, the pair go, and will no move there this time from Willisey. We're trying to get Bickley to go deep into the corner, but Bickley having none of it. Meanwhile, speaking having none of it here, Misha Berger having none of a potential move at Villeneuve, but I don't think it's going to matter when Parker tries to cut around the outside and back to the inside here as they make their way out to Tosa, and he's ever so close as they make the way up the hill. We ride on board with James Parker. He's got the inside here. He's just got his nose in. I think he'll go for the maneuver under braking, but Berger outbrakes his rival, but goes a bit deep, and Parker's going to commit as they make the way down. It's going to be too wide into Aqua Minerale. Now who's going to back out here? I think Misha Berger's going to go all in. Parker backs out. He tries to get Berger to go deep. Berger does go slightly deep. They come out the corner. It's a small touch, and as they make the way up the hill, no change, but Parker definitely now started to turn the screw and put the pressure on for P4 in the class, and also overall as they make the way on through the Auto chicane. The 2 gold class drivers right now going toe to toe. They're allowing the top 3 to gradually break away, but I think for Berger it's all about the points here, and for Parker it's It's all about hunting down a podium finish, and Parker will need it, given the fact he's so close in the championship versus Sampson. His championship lead is not guaranteed, and he would love to, after the win in the sprint here, to finish at least behind Sampson in the feature to keep that advantage well and truly live, even if it's by a couple of points. A couple's more than none, and as they make the way across that timeline very shortly once again, we're almost at the halfway point here. And also keep in mind that with the tyre wear rate, and it is quite a warm circuit, that could be a big factor later on. Perhaps that's why Parker is pushing it, but not pushing it too hard, just to try and preserve a bit of tyre. But there's a bit of contact there. Is that a lockup? I think Parker has had a lockup and a bit of contact. I'm not 100% sure there, but Parker going straight on. I think there was, well, there's definitely a lockup, but whether there's a bit of contact as well, we'll have to take a look back. But Parker, in a moment, he doesn't normally make mistakes, but right now this mistake is going to be costly as Atkinson looks to go around the outside into Villeneuve. He's going to have the inside into 6. Parker goes deep, but look at Koopmans here, who just cannot find a way on through. He has to wait and watch, and you can understand the frustration for the Dutchman here, as right now he's been trying to find his way past Atkinson for so long, and now he's got to also try and find a way to get into the mix versus Parker as they make the way up the hill towards Piratella. But let's take a look back at what happened between Parker and Berger, focusing on from Parker's perspective, and riding on board here. Was there contact? There was a tiny bit of contact, but I wonder if that was a bit of netcode contact. It didn't look as though it was a knock received to the back of Misha Berger's car. I think Parker experienced a knock, but not necessarily Berger. We return to live pictures now, but Parker definitely there in an unfortunate moment. Very close racing between the two of them, and I don't think either one can wag a finger at the other. But meanwhile, we return to live pictures, and well, whilst this is going on, the battle for P5, and we can tell you that Parker has held off Atkinson just about. We do look to what is here, Mark Custer's a little bit further back, and Mark Custer's in the centre side chicane, the esports machine trying to pick his way past Bickley. And as they make the way on down the hill here and head all the way in towards Ratso, it's going to be Custers on the inside, it's going to be Bickley on the outside, it's a battle on the brakes, and Mark Custers there gets the run, initially parks it on Apex there, and Stuart Bickley turns in to find a face full of the Dutchman's rear end as they make the way out of Ratso 2 and make the way down towards turn number 1 once again. 14 minutes still on the clock, and Mark Custers there gets a move done, and Bickley, I don't think he's got any counter-attack here. I think he had all the momentum blunted out of the car with that brief tap on the rear as they came through Ratso 1, and now Bickley's got to try and find a way to close back up again. Of course, he's in the draft right now, but it'll be in these chicanes where he'll have to try and find that rate of closures. Custers takes a bit too much apex curve, hits by the sleeping policeman, and as a result, they make the way through turn number 4. It's not quite working out right now for Custers. He's under pressure, and well, Bickley thinks about it, but he thinks the other way as they make the way into the braking zone here for Villeneuve, and both just about make it as they now head up towards Tosa. But as they make the way into the hairpin here, it's all gloves are off, and behind Cameron Willesey, your silver leader, just looks at this. I think he's thinking about getting involved, but also thinking, do I really need to get involved here, given how close and daring it is in the gold class right now. But meanwhile, speaking of silver drivers, here's Jack Ward running a comfortable P13, P2 in class. He's not really closing on Cameron Willesey. His lap times, in fact, just a couple of tenths a lap slower than Willesey on average, but he has got a sizable advantage over Stephen Kershaw here. Third place, P14 overall, and that's in the silver class, that third place, and right now enjoying a strong run and haven't gained a number of places since the start of today, and right now looking to have a solid result in this feature. But meanwhile, one driver who's had a difficult run, dropping 8 places overall since the start, is Rabbit Hole Racing's, that's Travis Linscombe Hatfield, who right now finds himself stuck behind Glenn Humberstone and battling for P5 in the silver class, what is P19 overall on circuit, as they make the way on through Ac Minerale once again. As they come on through, we're getting Alistair Hatches out of, oh goodness me, I believe that is Villeneuve unless I'm very much mistaken, and I think Alistair Hatches had a huge amount, and same for Lewis Willesey, who I think has had a spin at Aquinarali, but he's brought it back together. But it's all kicking off further around the circuit right now, as we're hearing that Jack Ward has just picked up a place versus Ryan Davies, and in fact, whilst that's happening, just to add more complexity to the mix, well, I'm hearing that Simon Bamber's had a bit of a moment on circuit, but meanwhile, we are just trying to pick what's going on, and well, here is Joe Newman, and Emil Koopmans has had an off track, and that has cost him a place here as Emil Koopmans drops down to P8, and what happened to Koopmans? Well, here close behind Atkinson, and he's just overturned the car, I should say, by the smallest of margins, and he almost caught it, only to have to pull the car to the grass. And I think he tried to catch it a bit too early, and the car said no, but he brought himself back up to speed in, only losing a place to Joe Newman. As we return to live pictures now, well, Koopman's under pressure from Mark Custers behind. The two Dutchmen will go toe-to-toe here as they head up towards Piratella, but Custers, I think, oh, goodness me, Custers almost losing it there under braking chicane, carrying a lot of speed under braking, and I think this is where the tyre management will now start to take its toll in terms of those drivers who have pushed hard over the course of the race duration so far. They will feel the pain through the tyres, whereas those who preserve the tyre life, they will have a much more comfortable run to the end now with only 11 minutes to go. We're almost 2/3 in, but you can definitely see that some drivers pushing it a bit beyond what the car's capable of now, and well, we'll have to wait to see who falls short at the end. But meanwhile, speaking of falling short here, again, battling for P11 in the gold class, Ryan Davies versus Tim Darracott, and right now Darracott trying to put the pressure on Davies as they make the way out of Alta. We ride on board the gearbox here on the privateer Ryan Davies as they make the way down towards Ravazza 1, coming through the kink of 13 very shortly, the right-hand kink, and as they make the way down the hill. Darracott looking at this, but I don't think he's going to go for the move just yet. He'll wait until the very end, or will he, as Davies goes round and right across the front there of Darracott, and well, Davies there getting it wrong, coming out of Ravazza, the car overturning, and that's going to cost him very dear. Meanwhile, we jump from P18 overall to P2 at the front of the field here, and you can see the top three running in formation as we're heading to Travis Linscombe-Hatfield's had a huge moment. What on earth has happened to Travis Linscombe-Hatfield? Well, making his way on down the hill was the American at the time. He's lost out to an extent versus Glenn Humberstone, and we gained the place on Glenn Humberstone. Just, well, he overcooks it into the braking zone for Ravazza 1. The car goes around. There's Davies rejoining the circuit, and in the end, Linscombe-Hatfield has to bring it off the circuit, and it's all gone so very wrong once again for our our championship leader in the silver class going into tonight. And well, Cameron Willesee right now leading in the silver class. I think if he's aware of what's happening to Linscombe-Hatfield, it may just bring a smile to his face a little bit. Of course, he doesn't want to win it through misfortune, another driver, but that will mean that come the end of tonight, he will be taking that championship lead, no questions asked. But meanwhile, we look back to the top three here overall and in the gold class, and we can see Simnor, Pollard and Sampson all close together. You could literally put a hair between the two of them and not have too much more space. But as they make the way on down, or the three of them I should really say, and as they come down towards Ravazza 1, well, now Sampson has the big question of can he pick his way on through him. You might be getting flashbacks right now to when we raced last in Italy at Monza, where a driver had to pick their way past all the drivers in the DCW Racing group, and then it was the boss at the end of Richard Simnor. Well, you have that here now as they make the way across the timeline, and Simnor trying to make sure he can break away, as Pollard here now has to stand the test of protecting his teammate as they make their way down towards Tamburello. You can see there Sampson looking for it, trying to get Pollard to outbrake himself, but Pollard not falling for it as they make the way through turns 2, 3 and 4 and head on down towards Villeneuve. Meanwhile, a bit further back, Custers here looking for the move on his fellow countryman of Emil Koopmans, and as they make the way onto the braking zone, can the Samsung Kane and eSports driver pick his way through? Not quite there, the door is firmly shut on him, and as they make the way through turns 3 and 4, you can see that Koopman's coming offline to defend, and as a result he's cost himself some rhythm, and as they make the way down towards Villeneuve here, Custers tries to get his nose in on the inside. He tries to get Koopmans to once again go deep, and Koopmans does not quite nail the chicane, but what he does now is the inside defensive line here into Tosa, and that's going to make Custers have to go all the way round. Now as they make the way out the corner, it's going to be a drag race up the hill. Custers technically will have more straight line to run with here compared to Koopmans, and they make the way up the crest and down into the braking zone here. Custers goes around the outside. He just about has enough room. Koopmans gives him the space, and Mark Custers, believe it or not, makes his way round the outside into Piratella and gains P8 overall and in the gold class here with only 8 minutes to go ahead of him Will Koopmans, and behind Stuart Bickley is not too far from see Koopmans, I think, has a slight slowdown, or at least he goes a bit slight out of Minerale, I think taking a bit too much of the exit curbing, and now has to wait and try and come back at Custers. But what a move there from Custers to gain that P8 overall in the class, as meanwhile we do look from Koopmans and Custers back up to the top three, and we can see here Pollard right now again as they head down the start for the straight, just having enough in the tank to be able to keep Sampson at bay, although I say that Sampson is about half a temp closer this time around, and as they make the way under braking, Pollard there actually goes defensive quite prematurely. You can see angling the car in the middle of the road. Meanwhile, Custers, well, he's dropped back behind Koopmans coming out of Ravazza. I think there might have been a small error for Custers, which has caused him to back off, and as they come on down towards turn 2, in the long charge they roll, and towards the braking zone they go, and as they do, well, no change at the moment, but Custers here definitely looking back at this and thinking they can get the move done again. Meanwhile, battling between gold and silver here. Stephen Kershaw on the outside. They're giving way to Tim Darracott, who made the run and through. And I think Kershaw, cognizant of the fact that he's battling with a gold driver, he doesn't need to battle for overall position. He just needs to make sure he preserves that P3 in the silver class to get some big points here in the class championship. And that's exactly what the 247 drive is going to do as they make the way through Villeneuve here with 6 more minutes on the clock, plus that final lap. But as they make the way in towards Tosa here, Daniel Dan Weaver behind right now, looking at this and trying to chase down Tim Darracott. It's only for P11 in class, but every point matters, every place gained, a little bit of psychological advantage, if anything else. But most of the battling has calmed down now. The main battling lies at the front of the field, and it is the top 3 here you see in screen as they make the way on down towards Ravatsa once again. And Richard Simnor right now, the DCW Racing Red driver, he hasn't got long to go, only about another 3 to 4 laps. But speaking of things not being long to go, well, with not long to go, Jack Ward's had a major amount of Aqua Minerale, and he drops down to P3 in the silver class. What is P15 overall? And as he makes his way up to speed here, we'll have to try and find out what exactly has happened very shortly. But I can definitely tell you Jack Ward's been in the wars. And here we go. Here is a replay as he came down out of Piratella. Well, the 484 driver here made his way into Aqua Minerale. And does he get it wrong the initial curb? No, car looks fine initially. Then on the brake in there, the car just snaps loose as he tries to turn on in, and that is what led to it going wrong for Jack Ward. But finally turning it around, and that's when we cut to him. But return to live pictures now, and Jack Ward will still P3 in class, still some big points to be gained, but I think he'll be kicking himself for denying himself a P2 if things finish as they are. Of course, anybody can still make mistakes. It's not just isolated to the Willisey Racing driver, and we've seen even the best fall over the course of the race here today as he makes his way underneath the gantry. Not long to go in his race. But meanwhile, we look back to Richard Simnor here with Mike Pollard behind, and well, the two of them have broken a little bit away from Sampson over the last lap since we last looked at them, and I wonder now whether Simnor might be feeling a bit of pressure from Pollard behind. Now, I think they'll work together up to a point, but I do question whether Pollard is trying to get the message through here. I'm slightly faster, and as they make the way out of what is there, the Aqua Minerale sequence of turns 9 and 10, well, Pollard's definitely all over the back of his teammate, and Sampson's not too far back. Sampson, to be fair, could also be backing off just to save a bit of tyre temperature here and get himself set up for a last push on the last 2 laps, or even the final lap where he'll go all in, and we'll have to wait to see if that's what he desires. But meanwhile, looking a bit further back to P5, after gaining 3 places early on, he hasn't really made too much more progress since then. James Parker, the 88 Tech Racing Team Purple driver, staying in P5 behind Misha Berger. As they make the way through Ravatsa 1 and into Ravatsa 2, well, I think right now Parker focusing on just bringing those good points home across the board here. But the 120 driver's got to be aware of the fact that if he doesn't bring home P4 as a minimum, then he's not going to be able to really increment his way away from David Sampson. If he'll go anyway, he'll go closer towards him rather than away as they make the way underneath the gantry board here. Parker's staying a bit further back, and meanwhile Richard Simnor here battling side by side with Pollard. The 2 teammates come to blows as they make the way through Tamburello, and when I say come to blows, there's no contact, but they're battling side by side. And look at Sampson now, who looks to make the move as well. Simnor defends here as Pollard tries to look around the outside, and Sampson's got to look at this, and I think, right, how can I capitalise the 2 teammates picking on one another? And as they make the way down to the braking zone here for Tosa Sampson up the inside of Pollard. I think Pollard there being caught napping in terms of not seeing Sampson coming, and now as they make the way up the hill towards Piratella, side by side they run. Will it be Pollard? Will it be Sampson? Sampson's going to have the inside line here into left-hander, and as they make the way through, I think David Sampson's got it done. Well, he goes a little bit deep there, and he has to back it off before running too wide, and Pollard now is going to try and go around the outside. That's brave from Pollard to try it, but he backs out there sensibly, and I think he's thinking about the potential cutback run up the hill towards Alta versus Sampson, and Sampson here has got a huge amount of pressure. You can see already he does not want to entertain this pressure as they make the way up towards Alta. He's safe for the time being, but Pollard is right there, and if they keep fighting like this, they'll have one more lap at least after this. Well, you can imagine that Berger and Parker, who are only 1.2 seconds behind, they're going to have something to say. They're going to have the bit to play as they make the way down the hill and towards Ravatsa here, but it's all heating up right at the end, and I think the challenge for all these drivers is who has got the tyre life and also the brake temperature left in order to be able to get the job done right at the end. Richard Simnor right now is not in a comfortable place anymore. He's got Sampson on his heels, the Samsung Kane and esports driver, as they make their way across the time. Then there'll be 2 more laps given the average lap pace here of what is a 45 or a 44, 1 minute 44 to be more precise. But as they make their way down towards turn number 2 here, Pollard looks to come back versus Sampson. Sampson covers him off here, and I think Pollard at this point, all he can do is Sampson hits the curbing there. He hits it a bit too high. It turns to Pollard backs off, and was Pollard in contact there there with Sampson coming through? I think there was, because there's a huge crumple on the front of Pollard's car. You can see it on the left-hand side of your picture, right-hand side from the driver's perspective, and I think Pollard was in contact. Unfortunately, we can't take a look back at that, but what we can tell you, if there was contact, it's definitely hurt Pollard, because look how much he's fallen back by 7 tenths down the gap compared to only 2 tenths moments ago. And can Pollard find a way back at that? We'll have to wait and see. They're going to have one more lap after this, given the current rate of pace. But meanwhile, a bit further down the road here, making their way into Tosa, we can see Custis here battling with Emil Koopmans. They make the way up the hill, and oh, goodness me, Koopmans turns around. They go for a spin, spins the car back round, but you can feel the frustration as Stuart Bentley comes on through. Meanwhile, Glenn Humberstone here looking to try and make his way past Ryan Davies for overall position. The ATXF Racing Team Cyan driver trying to pick his way through. He throws the dummy in on the inside, but he locks it up into Tamburello. You could see what he was going for, but just a little bit too late on the brakes there. But brave from Humberstone to try it, and well, next time it may just work out, but not that time around, as he brings himself back up to speed. Alistair Hatcher meanwhile into the pit lane, I think with some issues with the car, as we haven't quite had confirmation on what's gone wrong there. It may actually be a drive, no, it is a stationary car there, so there's something wrong with the car. But meanwhile, we look back to leaders here as they get ready to go on to one last lap of racing here today, and the Autodromo Enzo e Dino Ferrari, and as they make the way down towards turn number 2, Richard Simnor here leads, but only by 2 tenths, and it's not gaining, it's closing here in this draft as Sampson looks at a move into turn 2. Simnor has to defend here, but Sampson trying to pressure his rival into being offline, but there's only really one line through the Tamburello chicane, and Simnor's going to run it all the way as they make the way out of turn 4 and up towards Villeneuve they go. But look at this, Simnor being pressured to the inside here as Sampson looks at Emil Koopmans into the pit lane. I think for damage to the car it may be because of the spin early on, but Simnor holding off Sampson right now, and as they make the way out the hill, you can just see Simnor literally having to defend like his life depends on it, as there's contact between the trio there. Pollard coming into the back of Sampson, a brief love tap, and in return Simnor being given a brief tap on the rear. But right now Simnor is taking all the pace out of this race, and you can understand why, because look, Berger and also Parker are right there, and they're in this fight as well. They could be on the podium right at the end. Oh goodness me, and Mike Pollard gets it wrong coming out of Piratella. It means that it becomes a 2-horse race for the win, or does it? That's the question we wait to find out, as meanwhile Simnor here holds on as they come for Minerali. There's not many more places to overtake, and right now, unless Sampson can pull off an absolute blinding torture, he's going to go for it. They go on the brakes, and there's contact between the two of them, and Simnor goes round. Sampson comes on through, and meanwhile Misha Berger picks up P2 here, followed by Parker P3. Well, we're going to have to take a look back at that one, there's no doubt about it, but right now this is too close to call as they make the way on down the hill, and Parker now up into a podium position. Pollard is P4, but as they come out the final corner here, well, it'll be evaluated I think after the race, but on track he's going to come on through here to make it another win as he comes to line. It'll be David Sampson from Samsung Kane Esports who takes the win in the feature race at Imola in round number 8 ahead of Misha Berger P2, James Parker P3, Mike Pollard P4, and then it'll be Richard Simnor who comes across the line P5, albeit I think he'll be frustrated with how that concluded. Jack Atkinson P6 ahead of Joe Newman P7, Mark Custers P8, and then it'll be Stuart Bickley who shortly comes on through to take P9. The DCW Racing Blue, and then we will have Tim Darracott a little bit further back there, taking the final spot in the overall top 10, and the gold top 10, ahead of Daniel Danweaver P11, and then here he comes to the line, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, goodness me, it's run out of fuel, I think, at the end, and Jack Ward, in an absolutely surprising turn of events, takes the win in the silver class. I can't believe my eyes. I really cannot believe it. The Willesee Racing driver there, just hipping Cameron Willesee to the line, Andrew Jones P13, Simon Bamber P14, and then it's Cameron Willesee P15, P3 in class, Stephen Kershaw P16. It's all gone absolutely crazy at the end, and Ryan Davies P18 ahead of Glenn Humberstone, who's shortly coming through to pick up P19, and it'll be Travis Linscombe Hatfield who makes it out the final corner, and we're not done yet. Linscombe Hatfield going off at the final corner, and that means that Lewis Willesee will take P6 in the silver class, P20, and he completes our top 20 overall, and Linscombe Hatfield into the pit lane, I think, and that's going to release Richard White to take P21. Linscombe Hatfield, I think, in the end will be P22, and then it will be Matty Wild was our last finish on the lead lap. In fact, I think Matty Wild's actually going to take the place of a Linscombe Hatfield, as Hatfield has technically not come to a checkered flag, although I'm not 100% sure on that. And then we've had the 2 retirements of Alistair Hatcher and what is Thomas Davison, but we have got a lot to unpick, and we start off with what happened between Sampson and Simnor. Well, this was in the run to the Alta chicane, and as they made their way in, well, it's a difficult one to call. I think Sampson would argue he was squeezed aggressively in towards the Alta chicane. We take another look back here, right on board with Sampson. He saw the space, he went for it, and there was contact. Now, in return, I think Simnor would argue that Sampson was not enough alongside there. The wheel axles were not alongside one another, but again, that's why we're in the commentary booth. It's for the stewards to take a look at that one if it is reported, but that was one of a couple of moments right at the end, and another one, that run to the finish line. And well, what happened to what was Willesee, Cameron Willesee, being passed right at the end? Coming to the line, and the car run out of fuel, and literally with the finish line right there. That's Jack Ward going on through, and Cameron Willesee, well, denied a win by running out of fuel literally hundreds of metres from the final line, and that has got to be one of the most crushing moments for a driver, indeed for Cameron Willesee. But my goodness, as we return to the live pictures, what an end to the race today. And well, the only thing we can do now before our post-round interviews is, of course, take a look at those feature race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries. So after round number 8 of the Porsche Cup Season 4, hosted here today as the feature race at Imola for UKSimRacing on iRacing, Misha Berger in the end. Well, Misha Berger taking the win ahead of what was there, David Sampson. Now, Sampson dropping down to P10, unless I'm very much mistaken. We are just trying to confirm that, but I believe Misha Berger in the end being given the win. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm not 100% sure, but Misha Berger taking the win ahead of James Parker, according to our results screen, and we are just double checking to make sure that is correct. Give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, and well, I think it in fact is. We are just going to get those updated results coming on in. And yes, it's Misha Berger who is classified as the winner here by a 10th ahead of James Parker to the line. I think it was a post-race penalty applied to David Sampson. Richard Simnor P3 there onto the podium despite everything that happened. Then Jack Atkinson P4, Joe Newman P5, and well, then it was Mark Custers P6, Stuart Bickley P7. But goodness me, what a absolutely rampacked ends this race. But Stuart Bickley P7, Tim Darcott P8, Daniel Danweaver P9, David Sampson P10 in the end, and it was Mike Pollard P11 ahead of Simon Bamber who took the win. I think there might be a bit of an error with regards to our results screen here, ladies and gentlemen. We are trying to make sure that everything is correct, but well, a lot of drivers cross the line, very different order from what we've seen here. But Simon Bamber classified as our winner in the silver class, and for Simon Bamber, he's come all the way from the back to the front of the field, if so, and that's absolutely impressive, and that's within the silver class itself. Cameron Willesee P13, Stephen Kershaw P14 there to take the podium ahead of what was Glenn Humberstone, who was full place in the silver class. Emil Koopmans and Ryan Davies between the two of them, P15, P16, the gold class drivers, and then Jack Ward P18, and then outside the top 18, and going further on down, we do have Andrew Jones P19, Lewis Willesee P20 in the top 5 there. Also, just missing out in the top 5 of the silver class. Richard White P21, Matty Wild P22, Travis Linscombe Hatfield P23, a lap down classified because he came into the pits at the end of the race. And then Alistair Hatcher and Thomas Davison P24, P25, both drivers retiring multiple laps from the finish. But, well, that was an absolutely dramatic end, and if that's going to set the tempo for the remainder of the season, we are in for a fantastic ride in Season 4 of the Porsche Cup, hosted by UKSimRacing. But I tell you what we're also in for very shortly, and that is post-round interviews from Imola with our volunteered drivers. We'll be back, ladies and gentlemen, in approximately 5 to 7 minutes for those interviews. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we're due to kick off our post-round interviews for the venue races at Imola for rounds 7 and 8 of the Porsche Cup Season 4. Now, as you may notice there on screen, we only have one interviewee this evening, and that is the number 42 goal driver of Richard Simnor from DCW Racing Red. And I think the simple reason for that is many of our drivers have had an absolute cacophony of racing tonight where they've been battling hard and absolutely exhausted. And indeed, I think some drivers might just want to cool down and have a bit of private time now and appreciate the racing they've done and look forward to the rounds that lie in wait. But still, Richard has volunteered his time, and as he does get ready to join us in the interview room, it'll be interesting to hear his thoughts on what have been two very close races over the course of this evening. But as he now joins us in the interview room, Richard, fantastic racing throughout the entirety of this evening, albeit not without drama in both the sprint and, more importantly, the feature. Obviously, I don't think anybody expected the feature to end the way it did, but just on reflection, what do you think about tonight?
It was great. It was great little meet that was. I think there was some great racing up and down the grid, and I think we fully expected there to be big pile-ups in the in Tamburello, but it didn't come out. So yeah, we managed to survive both races and get going. So that was really good, really encouraging, and everybody's pace tonight was super quick. I think there was some concern from quite a lot of us about off-track limits and whatnot, because Imola's quite strict, especially around the chicane and areas like that. The final chicane, I should say. There's loads of chicanes, isn't there? But the final chicane is very tight for off-tracks. I actually had a really good qualifying lap in me on the second lap, and that's where I got an off track. So 3 corners from home, I was half second up on my time, and hey ho, I mean, these things happen in qualifying, and then in the sprint race, I think, did I start 9th? And I know I needed to get into at least 8th position to get the pole, or at least be on the front row. And my teammate there, Stu Bickley, was there, and I think we played it really well actually between the two of us. We had some fast guys coming in from behind, and we knew that the guys in front, they weren't quite there. So yeah, we just played it nice and cool, and that sprint race really set us up for the future quite well.
Oh, indeed. And just a comment on qualifying. So you're saying about that second lap not quite being the lap that you're able to achieve, and in the end, it could have put yourself a little bit higher. But just given the fact the top 13 in qualifying separated by 1 second, it's the closest we've seen in qualifying all season. Just your thoughts on that? Of course, you were saying earlier about the intensity of the racing here, but it's such a close field, whether you're gold or silver.
Yeah, that's interesting. The closest we've been in qualifying, that's a surprise. I mean, we were looking at practice times, and there were some really quick times, but when we watched them back, we realised they were quick times because there were a lot of corner cuts and straight lining chicanes and whatnot. So we didn't really know going into qualifying how tight it would be. We knew like Custer's had like this amazing lap time in practice. Would it actually materialise in qualifying? And it didn't. So yeah, it was there, and I started that second lap. I knew exactly where I'd been, as I described it to my team, very pedestrian. And it was the chicane, and I was just like, I just need to, put a good one through there, and it was good on the brakes, and it was good on the turn in, but I must have just been too far to the right, and it flagged up as an off track. So Yeah, frustrating, really. I could have been starting a bit further up, but I think if I'd have had been that far up, it would have been a lot more of a stressful time in the sprint. There was some quite dicey racing going on up front, and I think Stu and I benefited quite immediately from. I wouldn't be able to tell you who went off, but somebody went off, and we managed to get then 7th and 8th place, and we thought, yeah, we'll sit on this then.
Oh, indeed, and benefiting from the drama that was happening up the road in front of yourself and your teammate over the course of the sprint, and just, of course, making your way up towards the very front of the field for the purposes of the feature race grid. We talked about on the broadcast at Monza, we saw the DCW Racing Army having to fend off the charge from a driver behind. Of course, at Monza, unless my memory was mistaken, I believe it was James Parker trying to pick his way through the field to get to the boss fight of chasing after yourself right at the end. But today, it was David Sampson. Just take us through that dynamic over 30 minutes, because the momentum seemed to continually shift between yourself and your teammate of Mike Pollard, and then suddenly Sampson arrives on the scene.
Yeah. I think when Stu had his spin, like we could see we'd built a bit of a gap, and Mike was on the radio, come on, like, let's go. So we were okay. We started to pick the pace up a little bit, but we were conscious of the fact it's a 30-minute race. Tires needed to be in the right place at the end so that we could fight. And I knew a guy like David Sampson, he's going to be quick all the way through. And sure enough, yeah, you could see him catching. And I'm just counting down the laps. I'm just looking at it going, as long as I stay, I think I was like 0.5 to 0.8 ahead of Mikey, and yeah, it was enough. I knew where I was strong and where he was weak, and I sort of could relax if he got a little bit closer, because I knew I'd pull away a little bit more and later in the lap. And it sort of swung back and forward, like you say. But I think from my point of view, I was quite cool knowing that I knew Mikey would have a go for the win at some point. We are separate teams in that respect. I mean, we are both DCW, but we are blue and red. So I knew that he would go for the overtake, and he did. And I managed to hang it around the outside and keep going. And then I think that really put David right onto him, and they started fighting. I thought, oh, come on, let's just keep doing my lap, and keep the focus. And it was so hard because I think there was a couple of moments, 2 or 3 laps from the end, maybe 4, where the rears had just gone, and I'd put the foot down out of the chicane or out of the last 2 corners, and the back end was slide. I was thinking, oh god, just catch it, go, keep on the straight and narrow, and it was fine. And then that last lap, yeah, I know that the last lap is the lap that everybody's going to go for it, and I just put my car in the right place at every single opportunity, and forced David into the parts of the track that I wanted him to be on. And yeah, unfortunately, he wanted to do the same to me into the chicane, and we touched, and it spun me around. It's a shame. It happens. It's racing. At the end of the day, I don't mind that. It's hard racing. It's a shame that it was 3 corners from the end, and I would have won the race if I got through that chicane. And yeah, but got going again. It was fine.
Oh, indeed. And we'll come on to that specific instance shortly, but just picking up on that point you're saying there about the tyres going away, we saw a number of drivers really struggling in the final 10 minutes to keep in the car pointed a straight line. And given the number of trail braking zones and chicanes at Imola, what do you have to do to try and keep the car stationary, not stationary, my goodness, stable, I should say, in all those changes, and avoid ending up being stationary on the side of the track?
It's difficult because to do one thing, like keep your tyres in, you've got to not do the other thing, which is push. And when you've got mighty competition behind you, the temptation is to try and put in the quali laps, and you just can't do that in this car. Well, I can't do this in this car, let's put it that way. So for me, it was lifting off the throttle and just easing the brake on into turn 1, not slamming it on. Because the temptation there would be to go beyond what your tyres are capable of, and you never really know each lap. Each lap you're going to go into that first braking zone. You might have hotter tyres, you might have cooler tyres. You never know when they're going to lock. So the best thing to do there is just to gradually just put them on until you feel that they're really gripping. And the other thing is really rely on the engine braking in these cars, especially down. The best example for that is the last 2 corners coming down that hill. You've really got to be nailing those gear shifts, because if you don't get the engine braking down that hill, you can't rely on your brakes. You'll lock them. You'll lock them, and you'll go straight on into the kitty litter. And I don't know if that actually happened in the race. I was too busy looking forwards, so there wasn't a lot in front of me, so I didn't really see anything that went on behind. But that's certainly how I kept my tyres in. Make sure I didn't slam the throttle on outside of out of Tosa or out of the last corner, that sort of thing. Just be really progressive with everything, and make sure you get the gear shifts is really my advice.
Well, indeed, plenty of advice there for those tuning in to be able to take on board when they're racing the Porsche Cup 992 machine. But coming on to the instant at the auto chicane on the final lap, of course, like you said earlier, Richard, it's the last lap. Things are going to happen. But from your perspective, it looked very close. It was nip and tuck all the way.
Yeah, so the start of the lap, I got a slip 2 corners from the end, which put him right up on me. So I knew he had the slipstream going down the main straight. So all I needed to do there was show that I was really going to defend the inside. So I rode the inside curb a little bit, so you could see that I'm definitely going to be defending this. So he went right, and then I just made sure that my braking was progressive enough that I could stay alongside him, so he wasn't getting too far in front. I had the inside on that, and then just managed to sort of keep in front of him, and then down into Villeneuve chicane. Just managed to stay in front there. Defended the inside very rigorously into Tosa, almost stopping, I think, on the apex. I had to slow down so much. It was quite tight, but I knew he would dive down the inside. That's what you would do. I don't think he would have had the tyres to go around the outside, and I think there would have been too many marbles. So, pushed the throttle getting out of there, and I thought, this is okay. It's going to be tough into Aqua Minerale, but I think he won't be that he won't risk it too much. He'll try it in the chicane. So I defended the right hand side going into the chicane, left what I thought was definitely not a gap that you'd want to try, and kept my line pretty straight. And then just as I wanted to turn in, I got hit from behind, and it's fine. It's fine. These things happen. I think from his point of view, he then got a drive-through penalty because of his incident points. So it kind of raises a question in my mind: is like, if you've got 4 incidents to play with, and 1 collision like that will put you into the pits, why do it? Just settle second. It seems like a bit of a, I don't know, a racer mentality. You got to go for every gap and all this kind of stuff. But I think if he had the incident points to play with, I can't blame him for trying. But the fact that he didn't, it was a bit like, oh, why do that? Why wreck somebody else's race? But it's racing. It's no big deal. I still finished on the podium in the end after all the penalties, so I can't complain with that.
Oh, most definitely. And coming on to that very last moment, crossing the finish line, and at 1 minute crossing the line, according to our timing screens, in what was P5, to suddenly be re-promoted onto the podium P3. Must have been a bit of a roller coaster of feelings going from, oh, darn it, I've lost out on being on the podium and that potential win, to, oh, now I'm back on the podium?
Yeah. I don't feel like I'm that sort of meme of the guy standing on the 3rd step celebrating, and I'm not that today. I have been that way in other races where I've been like, 3rd place, amazing. Yeah, that's more than expected, and especially in P Cup, it's very tough. There's some great drivers all the way down the grid, and Dave is one of them. James is another, as we said last time around. So you've got all these absolutely fantastic guys. I think the one to shout out though was Misha this time around. I mean, the fact that he then inherited the win just shows that he was there. He was right behind us all the way. And I think that's his first win in P Cup, certainly with UKSimRacing. So yeah, congratulations to him, really. I mean, he must be elated to be there. Although, again, it's kind of the opposite. It's like, well, do you feel like you've won if you cross the line like that and somebody gets a penalty and demoted behind you? I don't know. It's kind of weird, isn't it? So I don't know if he stuck around to even acknowledge that had happened. But congratulations to both of you, both him and both James. To be honest, great races. Kept their nose clean and did the best that they could do. You know what I mean?
Indeed, and I think if Misha, if you're listening to this right now, congratulations on what is your maiden win, definitely in this season, if not the UK Sim Racing Porsche Cup over the course of its history. But coming back to yourself, Richard, with regards to the next two rounds, in 2 weeks' time, we make our way down under to Australia and Mount Panorama, the circuit that needs no introduction for how tricky it is over the mountain. How are you feeling for the circuit?
Don't, just don't. I hate it. I hate that, and I hate Bathurst. I hate Nürburgring. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of practice. It's going to be a lot of a lot of late nights on the sim trying to get used to those tracks. I don't race them in most of the officials that I race in. I tend to try and avoid them, to be honest. But I've got to at some point put my big boy pants on and do the best I can. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. You know, keep it out of the walls, especially coming down the mountain. That's absolutely. I mean, if anybody's driven it, it's just fantastic. It's one of the best things when you nail it. It's one of the scariest things when you first get to it. You're like, what is it? Is this an actual racetrack? But it is, yeah, it's crazy. Don't know. Maybe if I'm not doing so well, I'll try to jump. But there, we'll see.
Well, we do look forward to seeing you take to the Australian tarmac in a fortnight's time. But just before we do let you go, Richard, is there anybody you'd like to say thank you to or give a shout out to on the broadcast this evening?
Oh, do you know what? I'd just like to shout out the entire DCW team. You know, we always have fun. We always have a great time, and we had the potential to do really well today. Didn't quite happen, but we still really enjoyed it, and it's such a great community to be part of. And we look forward to many races with them in the future.
Well, we do love to see yourself and the DCW crew out on the circuit week in, week out. But with that, Richard, thank you for joining us in the interview room. Congratulations on your results today, and we look forward to seeing you out on the circuit in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you.
So hearing there from Richard Simnor, our gold class driver from DCW Racing Red, with slightly mixed feelings with regards to how the end of the feature race played out, but still at the same time picking up third place, albeit not quite a third place to celebrate rapturously about today, but at the same time a third place which was hard fought for, and goes to show you just how intense it is in the gold class, indeed up and down the field, how close our drives were over the course of tonight in qualifying, in the sprint and then the feature. And I think it's only going to intensify as we make our way into the penultimate venue of rounds 9 and 10 at the Bathurst circuit in 2 weeks' time. It'll be interesting to see whether Richard is right up there at the front of the field, or whether, as he said, has to spend those late nights on the simulator trying to find himself and perfect the art of driving over the mountain. But whilst we were talking to Richard Simnor, we have had another interviewee volunteer and come forward, and that is none other than the 88 Tech Racing Team Purple driver of James Parker, a fellow gold driver and a driver with some rather interesting results today, in the fact a P1 in the sprint, which I think he knew for certain was coming after he led the field for all the race, but then a P2 in the feature race, which I think perhaps was not expected. But as we shortly bring him into the interview room, it has definitely been a night of up and downs for Parker in that feature race, but less so in the sprint, whereas up all the way. And as he joins us in the interview room now, James, an interesting night of racing, a dominant performance in qualifying backed up by a dominant drive in the sprint, and in a feature race which came from being inside the top 5 to a second place finish at the line. Must be a bit of an odd way to end the night after an absolutely thrilling run to begin it.
Yeah, really good, really pleased overall. Come the end, like you said, the sprint was, I don't know why I keep getting pole position, to be honest, because I seem to sort of struggle in practice, but whether I just hold it together in the quali, I don't know. But yeah, happy with that. Got away, bedded the tyres in. And I think I had Berger and I think David behind. Managed to put a bit of a gap, and that was it really. They were having a bit of a squabble, like a bit like Spa last week. And then the feature, yeah, I was taking my time. I could tell I had a little bit more pace than the guys in front, but not a lot, so it would be tricky to pass. But yeah, I tried a few fouled moves on Misha. I think is it Misha? Forgive my pronunciation if that's wrong. In front of me, so I sort of was settling back. Instant points were quite high at that point, and then I could see it getting a little bit interesting up front. So I pushed on a bit more to be in the mix, and yeah, it all kind of came to a head on the last lap, which I'm sure you enjoyed.
Oh, I'll be honest with you, James. I'm absolutely lost for words with regards to that final lap, but also, in a way, lost for words with regards to your pole lap. 2.5 tenths clear of the pursuing pack. And to be fair, when we're just talking to Richard only moments ago, this is the closest it's been over the course of the season. 13 drivers, P1 to P13, separated by a second. Just a comment on how close the qualifying pace is from yourself?
Yeah, it's always a tough one. Like I said, in practice, there never seems to be a lot in it, and there's drivers who don't generally finish that high up or putting in good laps. But yeah, I happy to be that far ahead, to be honest. I practiced a little bit this week, and qualifying hasn't been great. The race pace has been all right, but yeah, so very happy with that. But it's just those couple of laps, just holding it together. One mistake, one X, game over. Yeah, could all be very different.
Oh, indeed. And coming on to the sprint race, of course, after holding onto the lead come the start, able to make the distance count over the remainder of the 12 minutes. I just have to ask you, what's your focus on that very start? In a run to turn number 2 at Imola that we have there, it's a long run, everybody's really pushing it and gunning all the way to the braking zone. What gives you that confidence to just carry the momentum through? Because it just looks like to you absolutely as cool as a cucumber as you make your way into Tamburello.
Yeah, I don't know, just probably a bit of practice, and yeah, I mean the aim is first off get off the line, try and make sure you're ahead of the second place, third place guys, maybe hopefully pulling away a little bit, and then it's a case of do we need to take the inside line? Have we got enough to open it up and try and push on quite early? At the same time, you're on cold tires, so you don't want to overstretch it. You want to bed those in for a lap or two. But yeah, just too much practice, I expect.
You can never have too much practice, surely. And speaking of having too much practice, we've seen it time and time again from yourself with the top 8 inverted in the feature. You normally have a very gradual start to proceedings of the feature, but start to pick your way through. And really today, we saw that in the opening 15 minutes, gradually picking up 3 places to move to P5. But there are just as many in front of you making mistakes as actual moves made by yourself. Is that always your focus of the feature, just to very gradually sneak your way up the order?
Yeah, I think so. It's just a case of getting around that first lap, keep out of trouble. Don't want to pick up any damage, which are going to hinder you for the rest of the race. And just stay in touch with the front guys, look after the tyres a little bit, bed yourself in, get a bit of rhythm, get a feel for the pace around you, the people in front of you. And then probably keeping an eye on the relative to see where the competition are. And obviously David I think he's probably leading or was leading the championship up to this race. Counting the drop week. So I was sort of keeping an eye on David. I had Berger in front of me. He was showing pretty good pace, but then I thought David was just starting to pull away. So I pushed a bit more to try and get past Misha, but unfortunately unsuccessful. I did lock up, and to apologise to him for that one. I wasn't actually trying to pass at the time. I just thought I'd, show the car in the mirror and see what happened, and then it kind of just opened up, and I ended up sliding through. So apologies to him for that one. But yeah, just slowly. Don't want to, you want to try and keep your, or my tactic is try and keep some tires underneath the car in the closing stages, because you never know what's going to happen.
Oh, most definitely. And speaking of never knowing what's going to happen, that final lap and the shake-up in the field with post-race penalties applied. From your perspective, of course, running close behind Misha Berger all the way to the finish, and Berger picking up their maiden win of this season. Just your thoughts on how it played out, because I think at one moment you probably thought, well, okay, I'm running inside the top 5. This is probably the best we're going to get. And then suddenly P2 at the line.
Yeah, like I said, when I locked up trying to get past Misha, I dropped back 3 or 4 seconds, managed to retain 5th place just about, and then caught him up fairly easily. Like I did, the tyres were quite good, so I managed to sort of draw him back in. But by that point, I picked up quite a few off tracks. So if I was going to challenge him again, it was going to have to be very, very clean as well. I had a drive through, so I was kind of, like you said, 5th place. That'd do me. Could risk being a lot worse. But yeah, obviously seeing David was a couple ahead at that point, I think. So it wasn't looking good for the championship. But obviously, I don't know what happened in the last chicane. I saw the spinning cars in the smoke. So I'm assuming it was quite tasty up there. And then went in the pits, and my teammate said to me, "Oh, I think you got P2." And yeah, so I assume there was a drive through at the end there, and can't complain at that, can I?
Oh, indeed, you can't complain at that result. But at the same time, now the momentum seeming to swing your way with regards to the Gold Drivers' Championship. Leader going into tonight without drop scores in account and continuing to be our leader. How are you feeling for the Australian circuit in 2 weeks' time? That is Mount Panorama.
Yeah, a tricky one. I struggled historically at that track, but the last time I raced there, it wasn't too bad. So yeah, a bit of practice. We'll see how we go. Very bumpy circuit in the uphill sections. Always a little bit dicey, and then obviously the big drop down the other side where it can all go wrong. So it's probably one of those where it's looking after the incident points, try not to do anything silly. I'd probably be happy with a couple of sort of podiums, top fives there, and take it to the last round.
Well, we'll have to wait and see if it plays out that way and you're able to achieve your goal in Australia. But just before we do let you go, James, is there anybody you'd like to give a thank you to or a shout out to on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, I guess shout out to Mikey Pollard. He helped me with my setup this week a little bit, which seemed to really work and save the tyres. So that was great. And the probably DCW guys for making it interesting up front.
Well, I'm sure Mikey Pollard will appreciate your kind words, and indeed the DCW racing team as well. But with that, James, thank you for joining us in the interview room. Congratulations on your double podium finishes today and the win in the sprint. And we do look forward to seeing you on circuit in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks, Paul. All the best. Cheers.
You too. So hearing there from our second and final interview this evening, James Parker in the gold class there, the 88 Tech Racing Team Purple driver, and a very strong run of form throughout the season continues for Parker with the win in the sprint and a second place in the feature. Picking up points, to be fair, where they were dropped by others at the end of the feature, but sometimes that's the way it goes, and you've just got to be there on circuit to the finish line, and what was in the end a top 5 finish turned into a second place on the podium finish, and you can imagine now that Parker will have a bit of pressure on him as this will promote him not just into being in the lead of the gold class without considering drop scores, but also with drop scores in effect, Parker's advantage now starts to stand a little bit more over David Sampson. But still, 2 venues still to be visited, 3 rounds of racing to go, and it could go either way. It's not over yet. And much like Simnor, Parker saying that the Bathurst circuit, which we visit next, will be a significant challenge and one that will need to be practiced for certain. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. And if you have enjoyed the show, well, firstly, thank you very much for watching and tuning in. But you also can go to the UKSimRacing community websites and web addresses. That is, firstly, the official UKSimRacing website of UKSimRacing.co.uk. Or if you want to go to something a little bit different, if you're more of a Twitter person, perhaps, you can always go to our official Twitter. That is twitter.com/UKSimRacing_. So let us know your thoughts on tonight, and indeed also to take a look at what's upcoming in regards to series and everything else in between that we manage and run here at UK Sim Racing. Also, a big thank you to our affiliates who we spoke about briefly earlier on, and they include Swellow Meadow Sim Racing Coaching. Their YouTube address there, Swellow Meadow, one of the premier sim racing coaches for iRacing, a multi-champion in official iRacing series, including the Porsche Cup for 2021. And indeed, Swellow Meadow, an individual who, if you go to them for coaching services, they can advise you how to improve your lap times, your consistency, or everything else in between, and definitely worth checking out. We strongly recommend them. Indeed, a number of our drives have been coached by the Swellow Meadow, and well, they can only give thumbs up reviews. On top of that as well, we do have Race Anywhere, and Race Anywhere, the provider of curated sim racing equipment, aiming to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community at their website raceanywhere.co.uk. Also, Demon Tweaks, their website demon-tweaks.com, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide. So no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweaks could help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions, either on the virtual circuit or on the real world circuit. And take my word, ladies and gentlemen, or check them out. They've got an absolutely huge roster of products there in their catalogue. And then last but not least, Amazon, their web address, amazon.co.uk, the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, Earth's best employer, and Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including, but not limited to, Amazon Prime, Fire TV, and Amazon Alexa. better. But with that, we now pack up our bags, ladies and gentlemen, and make our way around the world for rounds 9 and 10 in 2 weeks' time. For on Thursday, the 17th of November, we make our way to our penultimate venue. It is the Mount Panorama Motor Racing Circuit. You'll know and love it as Bathurst. And as our drivers make their way up and down the mountain, who will come out and stand tall, who will conquer the mountain, and who will fall by the wayside in the penultimate pair of rounds? We'll have to wait and see. But until then, thank you for tuning in. We have been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit. And if you have enjoyed, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay well, stay safe, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.